Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became a genius inventor part 2. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 3, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗵𝗃 from WhatIf. So let's start the video. A vigilante is seen standing over the destroyed building that was overlooking most of Tokyo. This vigilante had a hood over his head as he had his face covered with a smile-like piece of metal that served as a rebreather. His boots were black as night as they held spikes in the heel of the boot, as well as held knives in the boot themselves. We look over his facial features as the vigilante is watching some drug dealers dealing in front of most people. He jumped down as he kicked one of them in the face, causing their face to be opened up by his kick. They fell to the ground unconscious as he twirled around the air as he smashed his knee into the other guy's nose, breaking it. After getting them covered in capture tape that he made to be self-restoring, he started to interrogate them for information. "Where is Shigaraki Tamura?" the vigilante demands. "I don't know. He's been in the underground for a while," one of the guys called out, fearful. As the vigilante moves to the other guy to demand where the man is, a hero lands down right behind him. "Stop what you're doing, vigilante," the hero calls out. The vigilante turns around to show them his bloodied hands as well as his bloodied face from kicking the man in the face with his boots. "You are under arrest for the attacking of villains without a license," the hero said, rushing towards the vigilante. But just as the hero is about to attack, he uses his quirk to go even faster for but a moment before he feels an attack in his gut from the vigilante. "To think that you thought you could fight me Ingenium," the vigilante called out, punching the hero to the ground. As Ingenium looks at the vigilante closer now, he finds himself in a predicament. This vigilante is the notorious mastermind. He has knowledge of all the hero's tricks as well as powers. Every single hero in the top 10 has been in his knowledge of quirks, and they haven't been attacked by him since he only attacks criminals in search of someone. As soon as Ingenium got back up, he was punched in the face once more as he was sent flying out of the alleyway before he lost sight of the mastermind. Remember, this Ingenium mastermind is not looking for a hero. He is looking for a villain, Mastermind said, before disappearing. "Why is he referring to himself in the third person?" Ingenium asked, confused. Equals 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 equals. A few days later, we find Mastermind out on the prowl again as he is fighting a drag ring that was selling women and children, specifically girls, to gain money for their drags to continue. He had just defeated an entire mafia group in order to free the women and children as he turned around to find one of the best underground heroes right behind him. "You are coming with me, Mastermind," Eraserhead called out, pulling out his scarf. "You can turn off your quirk. I am a mere quirkless individual after all," Mastermind said, shocking the hero. As soon as the quirk was turned off, Mastermind defeated him in but a few seconds after catching said hero off guard. He walked into the night as he searched for the villain responsible for making him take his anger out on villains like this. He was running down an alleyway as we find him fighting some more villains in the area as we find someone who worked for Shigaraki Tamura in the fight against him. "Don't think you can find Mr. Shigaraki?" the man called out, punching the air where the vigilante used to be. "I should be asking you where he is, but it seems like you will not be talking. No matter, I will make one of you talk about where he is," the vigilante called out, knocking the man out with a well-timed kick to the face. As the villain falls to the ground, he calls the police and tells them where he is as he leaves the area. As soon as he watches the heroes and police arrive at the area where the villains are, he leaves the area fully in search of his prize. He has been going at this for years at this point, and nobody has been capable of finding out who he was. He just told them about a key factor in finding him, and he can't help but laugh at the fact they don't have a truth detector anymore. Don't get him wrong, he loved the man who was a living, breathing truth and lie detector, But he was glad he was dead as of right now, since they couldn't even guess that the vigilante was 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗲. He ran over the buildings nearby him as he noticed an occurrence happening near him. Rushing to fight, he was tackled to the ground by someone who was staring him in the eye. "So you are the mastermind. I want you to join my group of villains." The villain called out, pulling him away. Equals 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 equals. Inside a bar within the city of Tokyo, a portal appears in the area as a man with white hair and hands all over his body walked out with Mastermind in tow. He throws the vigilante across the room as he gets back up and gets into a fighting stance. He looks around the room to find that it was completely ready for a meeting as he looks at Shigaraki Tomura with a rage in his eyes. "So it was you who grabbed me, Shigaraki Tomura?" Mastermind called out. "Don't worry, depending on your choice of words you might live," Shigaraki said, smiling. "To what do you wish from me? I have been in search of you for a while." Mastermind said, cracking his knuckles. "You see, Mastermind, you think a lot like my old 𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗏. You analyze the quirks of your opponents and then you counter them with your skills. But I have a question for you. How would you counter Decay?" The villain asked with a smile on his face. Before he could get a reaction from the vigilante, said vigilante grabbed a knife from his back pocket and cut off Shigaraki's hands and blew them to pieces on the ground before kicking him in the leg, forcing him to take a knee. "I would take your hands." The vigilante starts, before breaking said villain's legs. "Then I would take your legs." The vigilante continued. Mastermind then cut off both legs of the villain with his sword he had on his back, before grabbing the villain's head and lifting it up off the ground by the hair. "And then I would decapitate you. You have had this coming for a long time, 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃. Mastermind said, slicing the villain's head off his body. As Shigaraki watched as his head fell from his body, he looked into the emerald eyes of the vigilante that was burning with hatred as he pulled out a massive flamethrower and burned what remained of his body to ashes and then collected them. Soon after the death of said villain, Mastermind had then taken the glass jar from the bar and walked over to the ocean before throwing it into the ocean to get rid of the body. As the bar sank into the sea, the currents took it out as far as it could go, where it sank towards the bottom of the ocean. "Now that he is gone, I can continue my normal vigilante routine. But first, you can come out now," Mastermind said, looking behind himself to find the pro-hero 𝗬𝗏𝗍 looking at him. "Who was that, Mastermind?" the woman asked. "Someone who didn't deserve a second chance at life. Now what are you doing here watching me dispose of a villain like this?" Mastermind asked. "I was told by May that you'd be out here, Izuku," the woman said as Mastermind looked at her with indifference. "I don't know what you are talking about," Mastermind said, staring into the chocolate eyes of the woman he used to love in high school. "Just stop this, Izuku. You know how much this scares May. I know that you can't leave her all alone," 𝗬𝗏𝗍𝗔 said, pleading with him. "𝗬𝗏𝗍𝗔, I have been doing this for years. The moment the number 2 hero was killed under the noses of everyone, I took it personally. I may not have liked him in general, but he was someone dear to my mother's friend," Mastermind said as his eyes got softer. "You could have become a great hero, Izuku. You could have tried," 𝗬𝗏𝗍𝗔 said, staring into his emerald eyes. "I did try. I was rejected for something I couldn't even control," Mastermind said, moving to walk away. "Then why didn't you try to ask to be placed in the hero course?" 𝗬𝗏𝗍𝗔 asked, concerned. "Because nobody would want a quirkless waste of space as a hero," Mastermind said, disappearing into the early morning. "I guess it still bothers you," 𝗬𝗏𝗍𝗔 said as she watched his retreating form disappear into the direction of his store. Equals 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 equals. "I hope you're happy with what you did, Izuku," May said sternly. She couldn't believe that he just went out and killed Shigaraki without telling the heroes about it. He was really starting to get on her nerves about whether he still wanted to be friends with Katsuki or not. He said that he didn't wish to be near the man anymore, but here he was, sitting in front of her with dark circles on his eyes as he was creating some gear for the UE students. I am happy with what I did. He killed the son of my mother's best friend. I am just giving her peace and knowledge that her son didn't die in vain. Izuku said, finishing his weapon for the hero student 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏. Mei sighed heavily as she called someone to their home in order to see what was really wrong with Izuku's mind. It was starting to get to her with how reckless he was being with his identity of being a vigilante, and she really wanted him to stop it so they could be a family. Her child was being born in a couple of weeks, and she didn't need to worry about her husband overworking himself to the point of dying. I'll be fine, Mei. I have done these many times before. And I'm still kicking. Izuku said, looking at Mei. That's not the point, Izuku. You could have died. Do you not care for your own safety anymore? Mei yelled at Izuku. I don't care anymore. I have these voices in my head telling me to do things, and I always push them apart as they were 𝗵𝗃𝗁s in the first place. Izuku screams back at Mei. As soon as they realize their mistakes, Izuku just sits down as he starts to cry. With this, Mei sat down next to him as he lets out everything that he had been bottling up from the death of his old friend. I always told him that he would get himself killed by being the way he was. But he never listened. I tried to get him to be nicer to others. It worked a little bit, but even then, he was still a massive JRK. Izuku said, sobbing. I just wanted my old friend back. Isn't that all I need to ask? Izuku mumbled as he sobbed into his wife's shoulder. You've been holding that back for a while, haven't you? Mei asked, concerned. His voice always talks to me in my dreams, telling me that everything that I am going through right now is just my imagination and tells me to just end it all. I can't get the voice out of my head. It's just there living rent-free, and therapy barely even works. I just don't understand what I even did to Katsuki to warrant him to hate me for my entire life. Izuku said, as he looked into Mei's eyes. She could see the pain in Izuku's eyes as he let out all his frustrations as well as pain as she soaked it in as she rubbed his back. She eventually laid him on her lap as she messed with his hair. He looked at her as tears profusely fell out of his eyes. Him on his forehead, Mei spoke to him. Stop with the vigilante business. You defeated the villain, he couldn't. You need to rest, Izuku. I can't let you keep working around the clock if you don't get any kind of rest. Mei said, smiling sadly at him. I'm sorry for yelling at you, Mei. I'm sorry. Izuku muttered, before his eyes fluttered shut. I'm sorry as well, Izuku. I know that you've been feeling awful about his death, and I took it out on you. So you get some rest. I will be here to watch over you. Mei said, as Izuku succumbed to his exhaustion. A week has passed since the recent sports festival that UE Academy have been having every year. Izuku and Mei have been getting harassed by the school in order for them to receive interns for the incoming internships, as Izuku has always rejected any and all interns that were coming in hoping to get recognized by one of the greatest industries that were out at the moment. Izuku, we need to get some help around the shop. Having some kids learn from us would be a godsend in terms of getting projects completed faster as well as more time on our hands as well. Mei said, as Izuku sighed in exasperation. Mei, you already know why I reject any and all offers for UE students to come here to learn from us. The same could be said for the other hero schools in our area. I would rather not be called out for being quirkless as well as not having my own ideas. Even though most of what society has been using were both our ideas, but they give most of the credit to you. Although I am fine with it, I would just rather be left alone so I could live my life peacefully. Izuku said, looking Mei in the eyes. I know, Izu, but you need to at least come out of your shell. It took me 3 years to do that myself as well as an additional 2 in order for you to ask me out. Mei said, arguing back. Their child having been born already had been watching them fight while laughing at them. She had green hair as well as pink eyes that had crosshairs inside them as she watched them with glee. Mei, do what you want. I don't want to fight you on this. If you want to have an intern here learning from us, make sure that they are learning from the person who teaches them at the school, not from me. I am already anxious enough as it is. I don't need more anxiety to be stacked on top of it. Izuku said, sighing. He walked out of the room as Mei had been watching him with a sad look on her face. She looked at their daughter as she sighed and picked her up and walked into the kitchen in order to feed the little munchkin. Equals 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 with Izuku. He had been walking among the streets of 𝗵𝗃 in order to clear his mind of the small fight he had with May that morning. I never thought that being married would be this difficult. I need to ask my mother for advice. Oh wait, she is dead. Izuku sighed, sadly. He continued to walk around the area as he found the place where 𝗬𝗍𝗄𝗧 statue was standing proudly as he was smiling proudly over the newly recovered hero society. 𝗬𝗍𝗄𝗧, what do I do? Izuku asked. I don't know what to do. I have always been wishing to be a hero like you, but that dream never came true. Is there really hope for me to always be happy in the future? Izuku asked the statue. As he looked at the tall statue, he remembered what happened in 𝗵𝗃 10 years ago. 𝗬𝗍𝗄𝗧 had fought his all-powerful nemesis all for one as they were titans in battle, a battle to the death. Izuku was amongst the crowd of people that watched as the legendary hero fought the evil being to the death, but the ending of the fight had all for one captured as well as 𝗬𝗍𝗄𝗧 dying later due to his injuries. He was also said to retire for the rest of his time as an old man before he became a teacher at UE, but that never came since the man died in the hospital a few days later. Izuku walked away from the statue as he was all gloomy about the life he had as of right now. Maybe in another life he could have been the hero he always wanted to be. But this was reality, and his dream was always cut off before it could even begin to show its fruits. But with his time as a vigilante, he had shown that he could have been a great hero that the world needed, not wanted. Izuku walked back to his shop where he found May on the phone with someone as he went to the back and started on his newest project, the Ark. It was a massive ship that allowed people to live on it for years. It was a self-sustaining massive ship that could gain power from the sun's rays as it kept the massive amount of sunlight rays in massive quantities to keep the ship going even during the night. Izuku was going to be spending at least a year or two in order to make sure that it was capable of flight. He had been at this for 4 years alone. May had asked him if he needed help to make it as Izuku told her that he wanted to make something that was his to himself. She acknowledged his actions of doing this project alone, and she was glad to see that his dreams of building it was bearing its fruit. It was a massive ship that was 60 meters tall as well as 100 meters long. It was truly a massive ship that could accomplish anything that the creator had set out for it. Izuku was at the end of the building project process as he needed to collect a lot of solar panels, but it was all worth it as all he needed to do was attach them to the ship and he was done. He was on top of the ship as he made the solar panels see-through, and it was a sight to behold as it was in their backyard. Izuku was on top of the ship as he was placing the last panel on the roof of it when he heard some movement around the place down below. Looking down, he saw that May was using their lift to get to his area at the top of the ship, and he smiled sadly at her as she was coming up with food. Izuku sat down on the roof after placing the last panel on the ship before May showed up with some lunch for him. I made some 𝗵𝗃𝗃. And I brought little 𝗵𝗃𝗃 as well. May said, smiling. Thank you, I just need to get this thing started, and I think that my project is complete. Izuku said as he looked at 𝗵𝗃𝗃. She had his hair color as well as curly look, but they were in dreads as well to match her mother. He looked at his daughter with a small smile as he rubbed the little girl's head. She laughed when Izuku did this as May chuckled when he rubbed the girl's head. As they ate their food, Izuku noticed another person at the bottom of the lift as he recognized the pro hero 𝗵𝗃𝗃 looking at his ship in wonder. Let's go meet the number 1 hero, May, Izuku said, getting on the lift with May holding their daughter. It took them a few minutes to get to the bottom to see the odd look on the man's face. Did you guys make this, May? 𝗵𝗃𝗃 asked, curious. Nope, it was all Izuku, she called out as the man noticed Izuku's presence behind the woman holding the child in his arms. Nice kid you got there, so you made this thing, huh, Izuku? 𝗵𝗃𝗃 asked happy. Yeah, I wanted my mother to see its fully completed look. But since she is gone, I made it to be like her personality in every way. Izuku said, smiling at the ship with tears in his eyes. Well, do you know how to work it? He asked, confused. Yep, I made this thing and I can definitely get it to move. It just needs to collect enough solar energy from the sun in order to power it up to 100%. Izuku said, looking at the hero. Well, when it is ready for flight, could I get a ride in it with Sun-Eater? 𝗵𝗃 asked, curious. Sure thing, only the number 1 hero duo can get a free ride to see how it goes. Izuku said, chuckling. He forgot how funny the man could be when he didn't wish to be. The 4 of them re-enter the shop as they celebrate the job well done, as Izuku was drinking some apple juice while they drank some liquor. Izuku was holding the baby as she was reaching for his cup of apple juice as he gives some to the baby as she drinks it happily before he pulls it away. He then decided to put her to sleep in her baby crib as he walked away from the duo in the kitchen. So how is your marriage with Izuku so far, May? 𝗵𝗃 asked, curious. It's the best thing in my life so far. I just hope that Izuku gets past his mother's death soon. He is still traumatized by it and doesn't ever talk about her unless absolutely necessary. May said, sighing heavily. 𝗵𝗃 could sense that there was tension between the duo since the early morning as he leans in to hear more. Me and Izuku had a fight earlier today about whether or not to have interns, and as much as I would love to have them, Izuku rejects them almost instantly because of his anxious behavior as well as his fear of them rejecting him for all that he has done. May said, tearing up a little. What do you mean by that? 𝗵𝗃 asked, curious. Izuku is quirkless. He is the first quirkless support hero where he can build things that are on par or far better than those with quirks. What do you think would happen when he reveals his best project to ever grace the world with his solar-powered arc? They would think that he stole the idea from someone else and copyright him for it. I have checked, by the way, there have been others who have thought of the idea, but they never voiced it, nor did they try to build it. Said it was too much money to work on. But Izuku persevered through it as he built it from a box of scraps. May said, looking at the number 1 hero. I see, then he would need someone who would believe him in that this is his own creation, and not someone else's. But how would one do that? 𝗵𝗃 asked, concerned. That's what I have been thinking about, and it's all Izuku is worried about. No one has been on his side since he was 4, and the only one who was is now dead because of someone not liking how they were treated recently. Izuku believes that once the interns get here, they will think that all his inventions that he had made are from my personal idea storage. But they would be wrong and discriminate against him for not having a quirk in order to do it himself. May said as soon as Izuku re-entered the room. Couldn't you get Yui to sponsor your build? 𝗵𝗃 asked, genuinely confused. They are some of the quirkiest that Izuku's ever heard of. 𝗵𝗃. May retorted as Izuku chuckled darkly. What is wrong? Did something happen during your guys' time there? 𝗵𝗃 asked, worried. I won the sports festival in my 3rd year there. I was 3rd place in my 2nd year. And finally, I made it to the 3rd round of the sports festival in my 1st year, and they didn't allow me into the heroics course because I was quirkless. When I got the notification about the fact I could have been placed into one of their classes, they rejected me because of the fact that they thought that I would just get in the way because of my uselessness. Izuku darkly said. And you want to know the worst part? May asked the hero. What? He asked dumbly. Izuku was placed in my class because of the fact that they allowed someone from Gen Ed with a quote-unquote villainous quirk? May said as she laughed loudly. That's really F up. They placed someone who was most likely bullied for his quirk over someone who showed that they could become a hero whilst being quirkless. That is really something that I did never think Mizu would think of. He really likes to cause chaos as I remember him, so to think that he didn't allow you in is really F up. 𝗵𝗃 said, as he got out his phone. I need to make a call really quick. 𝗵𝗃 said, before leaving the room. Equals 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 𝗵𝗃 was on the phone outside the building as he heard the phone ringing on the other side of his line. Come on. Come on. Pick up. 𝗵𝗃 wished. And as if his wish was heard, the call was answered as an old voice came through the line, very tired as well as monotoned. Mind breaker, we need to talk about something. 𝗵𝗃 said with a frown. What do you mean? He asked, concerned. Just meet me at 𝗳𝗵𝗵 Industries. It's just right next to my agency. 𝗵𝗃 said, as he heard a hum of acknowledgement. After a few short minutes of waiting for the underground hero, said hero showed up in his hero suit as he looked at the number 1 hero with a slight glare. I hope that this is important since you interrupted my sleep. The man said. He had purple hair that was pointed upwards reminiscent of the voice hero present Mike. Do you know what the hell happened during your sports festival in the first year of UE? 𝗵𝗃 asked, angered. No, why? What does this have to do about anything? The younger hero asked. Well, as it turned out UE isn't the kindest place that we have seen in a long time. 𝗵𝗃 said, slightly more angered now. What the hell are you talking about? He asked. Hitoshi, do you remember that quirkless boy that was in the festival for 3 years? 𝗵𝗃 asked. Mirio, if you're talking about Midoriya, why are you making a big deal about it now? He may have won the sports festival in our 3rd year as well as gotten 3rd in his 2nd year, but that means nothing when compared to those with quirks. The now named Hitoshi said, a bit annoyed. Well, how did you get into the heroics course? 𝗵𝗃 asked, even more annoyed now. Izuku said that I was going to get in because of his recommendation as I was showing promise with my quirk. Not only that, but he had been training me since way before the entrance exams even started. Hitoshi said, slightly concerned. Well, do you think that they were playing favorites? He asked once more as Hitoshi started to see something he didn't like. Can you get to the point of this conversation? Hitoshi asked, angrily. UE didn't allow Izuku Midoriya into the heroics course all because of something he didn't know couldn't control. He didn't have a quirk to show off to the masses, so they rejected his chances to get into the heroics course every time. They placed him in the support class as they preferred him to stay out of the way from real heroes. 𝗵𝗃 said, angrily. Hitoshi was now angry at the school for not noticing any sooner. They might have given themselves a villain within their ranks as they rejected someone who wished to be a hero, and not only that but said person they rejected had won the sports festival in his 3rd year, as well as placing 3rd in the previous. He really needed to talk to Izuku about this since this is really F up in terms of heroism at its finest. I will talk to 𝗧𝗍𝗪 about this, he should be able to shed some light on this. Hitoshi said. As he walked away, 𝗵𝗃 re-enters the shop as he finds Izuku drinking strong liquor as it seems like he is drinking his sorrows away. Hey, I think you've had enough. 𝗵𝗃 said, pulling the bottle away from Izuku. What do you mean? Izuku slurred out. Yep, you need to rest on the couch. 𝗵𝗃 said, as he laid Izuku on the couch in the main lobby. Can you tell me your experience about high school? 𝗵𝗃 asked, curious. What was there to tell? I was relentlessly bullied by Bakugo during my 1st, 2nd and 3rd years there. He found a way to always bully me when the teachers weren't looking nor where they could see on the cameras. He was always the worst person to ever be a hero. Izuku slurred out, mumbling a little. I see, why do you think that he couldn't be a hero? 𝗵𝗃 asked. But he was my bully ever since I was 4, he physically abused me, mentally too, not to mention what he did to me when I was 12. Izuku mumbles. What did he do? 𝗵𝗃 said, as he was not liking this at all. When I was 12, he told me to kill myself and that nobody would ever love me. But it was after school where it got really bad. He literally followed me home, and when my mother left for work, Izuku paused as tears started to show up in his eyes. He went into my room. And he literally beat me half to death in there. I was in my own home, where I thought I was safe, and he beat me within an inch of my life all because of one thing. Izuku said, crying now. What did you do to warrant that? 𝗵𝗃 asked, filing all this down in his phone since it was recording everything. I only saved his life from a sludge villain that had somehow escaped All Might's grasp and attacked him. I used my knowledge of the situation to my advantage as I got him out of the sludge, before I managed to get caught in the sludge as well. He just looked at me while I was slowly losing consciousness and he smiled. It was the scariest moment of my life. All Might came and saved me, but if that wasn't a moment that placed fear into my heart, I don't know what was. It was after that he ran up to me afterwards stating that I didn't save him and that he didn't need help. He left me after that, and that was until he arrived at my home. But before that, I had met up with All Might afterward. He had saved me once before Katsuki was held hostage by the same villain. He scolded me for getting in the way of the other heroes as I could have died. This was all in the same day, mind you. I was suicide-baited, beaten up outside the school, then attacked by a villain, as well as told that I couldn't be a hero on a rooftop where I could have easily just ended it there. Then he comes back and scolds me about being a hero when he wasn't doing anything at all, and before he even allows me to leave, he asked if I wanted to have his quirk. As it's the essence of a hero to meddle when you're not supposed to. Hypocrite. He then asked me to be his successor. Izuku ended with an angered look on his face. Let me guess, you said no. 𝗵𝗃 asked, worried. Yep, and then he thought that I said yes before I explained to him that I said no, and that I never want to see him ever again. I respect the man as a hero, but not as a human being. He is just as quirkiest as the rest of the world. Izuku ended, before he ranted himself to sleep. Pausing the recording there, 𝗵𝗃 stood back up as he heard May walking over to him as he heard her sniffling. He's never told me what happened in his past. To think that it was that bad. I don't know how he did it, but by now, many others in his position would have become a villain and very quickly. Either that or killed themselves by now. May said, tears streaming down her face. Don't worry, I will be getting to the bottom of this with a friend. He is someone to trust, and from what I already know, Izuku is deserving of the title of hero. 𝗵𝗃 said, leaving the shop as May lays down next to Izuku after pulling out the bed from the couch. Equals 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 equals. With Hitoshi, he was walking into his house when he heard someone call his name out to him. Hey Hitoshi. How was work? A man with a lightning streak mark in his hair asked. It is about to get a little more interesting. Hitoshi said, the man. So what is up? The man asked. Denki, I need to call Aizawa. Could you give me his phone number? Hitoshi asked. Sure thing, man. The now named Denki said, pulling out a piece of paper. As Hitoshi dialed the number on the paper, he waited before the call was answered before he heard his old teacher's voice on the other line. What is it, Denki? I am in the middle of teaching right now. Aizawa droned out. Sir, we need to talk. Hitoshi said angrily. As Aizawa answered back. What do you mean? It's about Izuku Midoriya? Hitoshi said with an angered look on his face. Aizawa Shoto was many things, but a man who chooses those who are better at certain things he is not. When he got the call from Hitoshi, his student in terms of learning heroics, he knew something was up based on his tone of voice. So he left his house in order to meet up with him as they are going to talk about something about what happened about 10 years ago. And he had an idea about who they were going to talk about, and he didn't know why there was a knot in his heart about the reason why. So he just left his home in the middle of the night as he waits on the building. He meets Hitoshi on every night before patrol. He believes that they will talk there, so he sits there waiting for the brief breathing that belongs to him. Soon enough, about 15 minutes later, Hitoshi shows up in his Mindbreaker persona as he sits down next to his 𝗵𝗃. So what is this about? Aizawa asked monotonously. Do you remember a kid by the name of Izuku Midoriya? Mindbreaker asked, causing Aizawa to look at him in shock. I guess you do. So do you want to tell me something that happened at the school where he didn't get placed in the hero course at the school? Mindbreaker asked, angrily. To be perfectly honest with you, Hitoshi, I wanted him in the hero course, Aizawa said, looking at the man beside him. As the young man next to him looked at him in shock, Aizawa continued. It was Principal Nizu who stated that Izuku Midoriya shouldn't get placed in the heroics program. Mainly because of the fact that he was quirkless, but there was another thing that he told me to never tell anyone until now. Aizawa said, pausing for dramatic effect. Hitoshi stared at him as if expecting an answer from his mentor as to why the man was pausing. The people behind the school thought that a quirkless person should never become a hero. So they made sure that he was never allowed inside thanks to someone who was feeding them information about our students. Aizawa said, knowing Hitoshi will be angry. Ooh. Hitoshi asked, angrily. It was Toshinori Yagi, otherwise known as Aizawa, started before Hitoshi finished for him. All Might. Hitoshi growled. Yup, When we were about to make the decision to place both you and 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 into the hero course, he came up and stated that a quirkless hero would throw everything that heroes stand for upside its head and throw society in chaos. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟 said, looking down at the streets. Years prior, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟 was walking into the teacher's meeting room as he was looking over possible prospects who could take the places of some of his more horrible students. He really wanted to get rid of 𝗵𝗃𝗻𝗻𝗄. He had been the bane of the girls' existence in his classroom as he was constantly making them do things for his mental entertainment. He had many times openly leered at their bodies as they were very disturbed by how he looked at them with bad thoughts. He even openly stated that he was perverted and wanted to be a hero because he wanted to get laid. Out of the ones who made it to the final part of the sports festival, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟 was looking at these two students closely. One, Izuku 𝗵𝗃𝗻𝗃𝗧𝗏, and 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 𝗵𝗃𝗃 had been playing their cards correctly and could become great underground heroes, given the nature of their quirk status. One being quirkless, the first to ever make it into the halls of Yui Academy in the lifetime that it had been open. And the other had a so-called villainous quirk that has the ability to take over your mind and leave you in the clutches of the other. Both students had histories in school as being so-called rambunctious, starting fights, as well as discriminated against others based on their files, but 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟 wasn't one to be fooled. He knows someone who discriminates others based on their attitudes towards others around themselves. He already knows one of them personally himself, as they are in his class. One, Katsuki Bakugo, had been found out that he was making comments about another quirk user by the name of 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗄𝗏 and his quirk Dark Shadow. So you have history with this person, huh? 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟 mumbled to himself. What are you looking at, 𝗧𝗱𝗏? A blond man asked, curious. Just looking at some files on some potential heroes that could enter the underground hero database? 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟 stated, as he smirked at their potential. What are their names? A woman asked. She was wearing a large suit that covered her very generously whilst looking like the buttons were about to break. Their names are 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 Izuku and 𝗫𝗄𝗧𝗏𝗄. They have the potential to become great heroes within the underground. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟 said, as one of the names gained the attention of one of their newest co-workers. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 Izuku? A blonde, emaciated man asked, concerned. Yes, that is one of my prospects for changing the students out in my class. I can only hope that they get better over time during their tenure in my classroom. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 stated, correcting the files collected in his hands. Don't let that 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁 kid in the hero course. The man said, as if he didn't want that person to do something bad. What are you talking about, Toshinori? 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 asked angrily. That boy has too much of a hero complex. He will literally place himself between a person and a bullet, and take it before caring about himself. Toshinori said, looking at them with fear. I will have to see about that. If he shows anything about that himself, then I will make sure to beat it out of him. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 said, leaving the room. I can't allow that boy to become a hero. It would throw away what I've told him. Toshinori said, calling up Nizu. All Might, to what do I owe the favor of being called by you of all people? Nizu asked cheerfully. Can you make sure that one Izuku 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗄𝗏 doesn't get into the hero course? Toshinori asked, urgently. What is wrong with this student in particular? Nizu asked, curious. Based on his files, from what 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 stated, he had been in fights and instigated others to discriminate against him in the past. He also, based on what he said, stated that Bakugo went to the same school as him. Toshinori said, now sweating. I will look into this, Toshinori, but if I find out you are lying, then you will be punished. Nizu said with a stern voice. Receiving a nod from the other end of the line, as well as camera that was showing All Might's image to the animal, he hung up the phone. Just as if it was timed, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 walked into the room as he held two files that were in his arms. As he closed the door behind himself, he walked over to the animal. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏-kun, to what are you doing here today? Nizu asked, cheerfully, to which eerily made 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 unconsciously grab his capture scarf. I have two prospects that have been getting my attention from the sports festival. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 said, placing the files on his desk. As Nizu read the files, he realized something that was really odd. With 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗄𝗏 and 𝗫𝗄𝗧𝗏𝗄𝗏's files, there are many accounts of discrimination on there that clearly state that they are discriminatory against others, and based on the personalities that he has seen from both of them, one may be based on truth, while the other is a complete fallacy. He looked at Izuku's file as it showed him having a nervous expression on his face as he looked into the camera. Izuku-kun, I was just told by Toshinori that Izuku-kun was very discriminatory based on his files. Did you perhaps choose him because you wished to deal with his attitude towards others? Nizu asked, curious. No, he has potential, as well as based on his information I have reason to believe that he was the one being bullied as well as discriminated against his will. He did nothing based on his mannerisms based on his actions towards 𝗵𝗃. He has a more nervous outlook on life as well as more reasons to become a villain than others. I wouldn't put it past him to even think about ending his life many times before in his life. Izawa said, gaining the trust of Nizu. Well, I will put these two up for the hero course as they will most likely be evaluated before being placed in there. There is a system that we must go through before they make their entry into the course. Nizu said, placing the files away in his storage drawer. The very next day Izuku had entered the room where the leaders behind Yui Academy were sitting as they were evaluating his very dream of becoming a hero. So what is your reason for becoming a hero? One of the leaders asked, curious. I want to become a light in the darkness. I don't care if I am a limelight hero or underground specifically. I just wish to help people and have them feel safe around me. Izuku said, smiling sadly. As he said this, one of the other leaders noticed his sad smile as they wanted to get some information. So, what were you doing before trying out for Yui Academy? The leader asked. I was watching heroes and their fights with villains. They are just so cool. The heroes, I mean. I wanted to become one ever since I was 4, but I never got what everyone else did and was bullied for it. Izuku said, looking away uncomfortably. Can you tell us who bullied you to the point that you would give up on your dream and enter another class? The leader asked once more. I don't want to risk his future. It would make him look bad. Izuku stated, nervously. The leaders noticed his nervousness and decided to press further, in order to get their answers that they need him to talk. We need to know because we never know if he is doing what he did to you to others around him in our school and we take bullying very seriously. The leader said angrily. He would find me later after you find out and would beat me within an inch of my life, please. I don't want to destroy his dream. Izuku pleads, wanting them to stop asking this question. We will not allow you into the hero course if you don't tell us who this person is, otherwise, we will not believe your story. We already believe that you are lying to us right now. The one leader that didn't speak stated, neutrally. Why we wouldn't even believe me if I even told you. Izuku said, looking down now. Well, if you wish to not disclose his name in the way you think that protecting him is alright, we will not allow you to enter the hero course until you tell us who it was. The leader said, calling an end to the meeting. They called in the next person as Hitoshi had walked by an unresponsive Izuku as they were walking in slow motion next to one another as Hitoshi looked in his direction for a minute-second. As Izuku would enter the sports festival with different gadgets every year, he would place the third-place slot in the second year, and once again protect the one person he shouldn't have protected once again being denied. And finally in the final sports festival Izuku finally tells them who it was. Are you going to tell us yet? This is getting annoying. We really wish for you to become a hero that we are willing to take any answer right now. The foremost leader said, out of anger. I tried to warn you at least. Izuku mutters. As the leaders all look in his direction because they heard his mutter, they heard him state the name that they never thought he would name. His name is Katsuki Bakugo, and he was my bully ever since I was 4 years old and was diagnosed as quirkless. Izuku said, receiving silence as an answer. As they were looking at him in shock as well as anger, Izuku took this as his only chance to get in being rejected, so before he could even get an answer, he left the room thinking it was a rejection. How are we supposed to deal with a situation like this? One of the leading teachers of the school board asked. We need to deal with this the way we are supposed to deal with it. We will expel this Katsuki Bakugo and replace him with Hitoshi Shinso, as well as place Izuku Midoriya inside Class 1B-. The leading member of the Teachers' Board of Education said but was interrupted by someone entering the room. To what do we owe the favor of you entering here, All Might? One of the members asked. Did you accept Midoriya Izuku into one of the heroics classes? He asked, more sweaty than usual. Not yet. We were about to make it official that he would enter 𝗵𝗃𝗃's classroom as he is the better teacher to help him in terms of fighting quirkless against someone with a powerful quirk. The leading official said, smiling. You can't allow him to enter the heroics classes. He stated, more urgently. Why are you demanding this, All Might? Isn't this being hypocritical about what you tell everyone? They ask, morbidly confused about his decision to allow the quirkless student to not be allowed into the heroics classes. He had been proving that he could be better than most of the class of both classrooms many times over the years, and his self-sacrificial nature would be under complete control by the time he would be graduating. So hearing All Might be so hypocritical right now was not a good thing at the moment. I told him years ago that a quirkless hero would never happen, since it would essentially be sending someone who has no quirk to fall back on to defend themselves against someone who is stronger than them alone without a quirk. I know that this is being quirkist, but he really needs to not be allowed, because I would feel like it was my fault that he dies out there because he became a hero. All Might said, not smiling anymore. From the look on his face, it seemed like he didn't like this decision any more than he did when he said it to their face. But it was out now and there was no going back. Well, if that is what you wish, we will accept your wish. But you will know that these actions will have consequences, correct? They ask, looking at him with an angered gaze. Dock my pay or not, do whatever you want. Just make sure that he doesn't become a hero. I will deal with the ramifications later, as I will be the only one responsible. All Might said, looking out the window. Back to present. I overheard what the oaf said to the school board, and they allowed it. Now that you know this, how do you feel? I couldn't do a thing, since my opinion doesn't matter, nor does it mean anything to them anymore. When I had heard that Midoriya wasn't allowed into the hero course, I gave up my job to focus on this one. And haven't been the same since. Izuku said, tears coming out of his eyes. It was really rare to see the man cry, but it was being let out now since he couldn't do anything to save the career of Izuku's dream. That conniving bastard. He basically ended his dream before it could even begin. Hitoshi called out, angrily kicking some gravel off the roof. I know, but when Midoriya heard about it, he was worse than you. He openly stated that if he couldn't become a hero, then how would the school like it if he became a villain? He openly stated that in front of everyone, and most of them actually took it seriously. Why do you think he wishes to be left alone most of the time? He really hates people right now, but once he hears of this, his view of All Might will plummet to non-existence. Izuku said, getting up. Now that you know, be sure to allow him to know that the hero he all but worshipped in his younger life ruined his chance to ever be a hero. Izuku said, but just as he was about to leave, they looked to their right and found someone moving about the night. Taking off, they head over to the person, jumping from roof to roof as they get the best view they could to see who it was. And they couldn't believe their eyes when they find out that the person they're tailing was Mastermind himself in the flesh, fighting some bad guys out on the street. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 just couldn't count his luck that he and his old 𝗵𝗃𝗃 had to just run into Mastermind at this point, as well as time of night. They took off towards the brutal vigilante in order to stop him from brutalizing more people of the night as they run from roof to roof. Mastermind seemingly notices their presence as he picks up his pace, as they are forced to go into a full sprint as he jumps from another building into one that doesn't have an exit unless he goes down. This is where their fight will begin, and they will stop this menace. Mastermind seemingly noticed his problem as he pulled out 2 batons from his holster as they lit up with electricity. I didn't want to do this to you both, but it seems like you aren't giving me a choice. An older voice said, coming from the vigilante, called out. So he is around the 50s or late 60s in terms of age. Good to know, now we can take him without damaging property. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 thought to himself. Eraserhead and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 teamed up as they fought the vigilante with techniques as well as their quirks. But it just seemed like Mastermind was all around F with them, as he let himself be taken advantage of with his inexperience with pro heroes. Their fight lasted a while as both parties had become stressed as well as tired from exhaustion, but it seemed like Mastermind had gotten them beat with endurance. As he stood tall, as 𝗵𝗃𝗃 and Eraserhead were slouched and hunched over as they stared at Mastermind. Just then Mastermind went on the offensive as he kicks Eraserhead in the arm, launching the hero away from their area as he looks over at 𝗵𝗃𝗃. The duo stared at one another as 𝗵𝗃 had noticed something similar about Mastermind's form. It was extremely similar to someone who he knew personally, and it wasn't a good sign, but he needed to make sure that this wasn't him. "Are you Izuku Midoriya?" 𝗵𝗃 asked as he was greeted with silence. "I am not Izuku Midoriya, but at the same time," Mastermind said, taking off his helmet showing off his green locks of hair and some freckles on his face. 𝗵𝗃 had then noticed that the eyes of the vigilante was emerald, green, the same ones that belonged to Izuku Midoriya. "But at the same time, I am also him. It was nice to meet you, 𝗫𝗄𝗧𝗏. But I personally think that our time has run out," Izuku said, throwing a flashbang on the ground as he ran off. As Mastermind left the area, he failed to notice that Eraserhead was running after him as 𝗫𝗄𝗧 was lying on the ground covering his eyes. As Izuku was running from roof to roof, he landed on another rooftop as he was kicked in the back, sending him towards the edge of the rooftop as he held onto the ledge with his left hand. "𝗧𝗏𝗋." Izuku grunted as the person who attacked him from behind walked over towards Izuku as he looked down, only to be met with the helmet of the vigilante hitting him in the face as he backed off, allowing Izuku time to get up from the edge and jumping back and placing his helmet back on. When Eraserhead regained his bearings, he found Izuku's eyes staring him down coldly. "Why did you become a vigilante, Mastermind?" Eraserhead asked, as he used his cell to call for backup. "Why do you think?" "I wasn't allowed into the hero course because I was quirkless," Izuku said, his true voice coming out to the man. Izuku's voice recorder was broken as it had Eraserhead knowing his true voice now. "Did you even try to get in?" Eraserhead asked, concerned. "I did. Every year they never let me in. I was rejected because someone else with a quirk needed to get in over the quirkless reject," Izuku painfully said. It was making sense to Eraserhead now. This person was in the general education department and tried to enter only to be rejected. "What makes you think that quirkless means that you'd be a reject?" Eraserhead asked, stalling for time. "What makes me think that?" "Oh, because everyone in this demon world wished death upon me. Nobody wanted to be my friend, nobody asked if I was okay. Nobody even gave a DMN about my choices, nor did they give a F about my life, to the point I was abused constantly for it. Do you really think that I don't know you, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏? You are the only hero besides Lemillion, Sunny-Eater, 𝗵𝗃, as well as his allies that he is close with that are true heroes," Izuku screamed. As Aizawa was going to ask what he was talking about, Izuku continues on. "I just wanted to be a light of hope for the people. I just wanted to be a hero for them, to just see them smile," Izuku said, dejectedly sitting down. He slammed his fist on the brick wall behind himself as he moved forward and slammed his head on the ground strong. It was enough to break his helmet as he wasn't seemingly in the right state of mind to be aware of his identity being revealed. Stupid. Stupid. Quirkless freak. Worthless. Waste of space. I should have just listened to Kaken when he told me to kill myself. Izuku screams, venting out all his frustrations about the world and his life. Eraserhead watched on in horror as Izuku's identity was revealed to him as he continued to slam his face into the ground, making blood spurt out from his forehead. Running over to him, he pulled him into his capture gear as he held him down on the ground to prevent him from doing anything more that could harm himself. "𝗵𝗃, come in," Eraserhead called on his transponder. "𝗵𝗃 here, did you catch Izuku?" he asked, concerned. "He isn't in a right emotional state. He really seemed to be hurting right now. He just had a mental breakdown to the point his darkest memories came out. You need to tell me more about him since he just stated something horrifying," Eraserhead said, nervously. "What was it?" 𝗵𝗃 asked, concerned more now. "He just started talking about someone named Kaken telling him to kill himself," Eraserhead said, looking down at the now sleeping Izuku. Feeling for a pulse, he found that Izuku's pulse was weak, but it was still showing that he was alive. Equals 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 𝗵𝗃 and 𝗧𝗏𝗏 arrived in the hospital as they looked at the vigilante that was undergoing surgery on his skull. How is our vigilante? 𝗧𝗏𝗁 asked, concerned. Do you want the good news or the bad news? 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗃 asked. The bad news first. 𝗧𝗏𝗁 asked. Well, he had a mental breakdown while fighting me, as he stated someone named Kaken told him to die, which means that this person is either dead and haunting him to this point, or he has some serious demons in his mind, and they aren't leaving him alone. But the worst part was that he slammed his head on the brick wall so strong that he left a dent in his skull. I don't know what happened to him to make him have that mental breakdown, but he was seriously scaring me with how he described his life. It wasn't pretty. 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗃 said, causing 𝗵𝘃𝗲 and 𝗧𝗏𝗁 to look at him in shock. That is the bad news. What's the good news? 𝗵𝘃𝗲 asked, concerned. His skull will be capable of being repaired once he gets out of his concussion. But other than that, we are to not arrest him, 𝗧𝗏𝗁. 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗃 said. But he was a vigilante for a few months to a year. He broke some kind of law, right? 𝗧𝗏𝗁 asked, incredulously. That's because he can't get in trouble with the law as long as it's self-defense, especially without a quirk. A feminine voice called out. Oh God, it's the explosive beast, run for it. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 runs off screaming. Well, now that he is gone, I know about the person who made Izuku like this. The woman said, garnering the attention of 𝗧𝗏𝗁. Who up his mind to this extent? It is someone who was actually evil. 𝗧𝗏𝗁 asked sternly. The woman stepped up to them as it was revealed to be 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲 and 𝗳𝗵𝗃 Industries. The person who up his mind to this point is 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗁𝗏. May claimed. What are you talking about? He's been dead for at least a couple months. 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗃 said, a bit angered. Oh, I'm not talking about recently. I mean, a few months ago he found our shop and basically demanded that our child becomes friends with his daughter in order to make her bully our kid as well. He even stated it to my face. But what he just witnessed? May said, pointing towards 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗃 with emphasis on the witnessed. Is Izuku breaking down after a fight we had earlier today. I wanted him to stop being a vigilante because of the fact that his old friend's death got him really strong. Even though he had a restraining order on him, he never really truly hated him. He just wanted him to apologize, and they could start over as friends. Not to mention during his middle school years bullied/abused/mentally abused Izuku all the way until graduation of every school ranging from elementary to now. So yeah, him getting hit with a quirk that recovers most of those nightmares that he has of that man would be most likely brought back to the surface, as he would be in a state of mind similar to how he was when he was in middle school. 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗏 told Izuku Midoriya that he should jump off a roof and pray to get a quirk in his next life because of the fact that he hated him. May said, breathing in a gulp of air. Since he's dead, there's nothing we can do about him. 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗃 said, now looking very, very angered as well as regretful. As 𝗧𝗏𝗁 looked at May, he found that his quirk never told lie, and was constantly saying truth during the whole explanation. That is just wrong. How did he even become a hero in the first place? He called out angrily. Because Izuku never brought it up. He was trying to give his old friend every olive branch he could to put him back on the right path to heroism, but they never really worked. Hell, he tried to kill him in the first sports festival. May said angrily. So that's why he was so adamant about beating him. He was just trying to kill him so he wouldn't have to deal with him anymore. 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗃 said, angered now. How long until he is awake? May asked. It should be a few days before he wakes up. He hurt his head really bad. Not to mention his mental state isn't in the right place. 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗃 said, looking out the window. I know that he has mental issues, it's just getting harder and harder in keeping him down to talk about them. Just yesterday he had a nightmare that showed that Katsuki had killed his mother. May said, looking away. He wouldn't have viable reason to kill her though. 𝗧𝗏𝗁 said, confused. Oh, he did, you just didn't realize it? May said, entering the room. As they watched the woman walk up to her sleeping husband, they looked at one another before bringing up the case of Inko Midoriya. It's time to put her soul to rest. May had left the hospital that Izuku was in. She was really worried about his mental health since he hadn't talked to her since the previous night as well as before he went out on his nightly endeavors. He had hidden the fact that he was feeling this way from her for years, and this would definitely put a strain on their relationship. She didn't like when he didn't tell her things. So when she found out about his deteriorating mental health, she couldn't find out what to do, so she went to the only place where she could figure out what to do. Go to school. She still had students to teach as well as mold for the future. She just wishes that Izuku was there to assist her in that endeavor while she did what she loved most, inventing. But since she really needed help, she could only find the best person possible to assist her in her plea of needed help. Principal Nizu was the man/bear/dog/mouse being that was smart enough to know how long Izuku had been suffering like this. And she would get to the bottom of this so she can find out what the hell happened to her husband and find a way to help him gain his mentality back. She knows how Izuku is when he isn't mentally strong at the moment. He will do anything to try and feel pain or some semblance of it in order to feel alive. So she needs to do this fast enough so that Izuku doesn't go down the mental gymnastics that is suicidal thoughts. Arriving at the place of work she had for a few months, she entered the school grounds and headed for the school's principal's office. As she entered, she found the principal sitting on his couch reading one of the newspapers that he earned from one of the stands outside of his school. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲, to what do I owe the pleasure of speaking to you? He asked jovially. Principal, I need your help with something that might be a bit controversial in order to save someone I love, 𝗵𝗃 said, looking at the mouse. Who might need my help? Nizu asked curiously. It's Izuku, 𝗵𝗃 said, as Nizu immediately frowned. He had heard about Izuku from his past years in the school, and to hear that it was Izuku who was in trouble, he couldn't understand why the young man was in need of any help. Why do you want me to help you save your husband? Nizu asked. He's mentally declining in terms of life expectancy. And I don't want him to continue wishing that he died. He's had a really bad life, and high school only cemented his normal behavior today. Ever since he never got into the hero course when we both were here during our high school years, he hasn't been the smiling, happy man I fell in love with ever since. And it only got worse after the death of his high school bully Katsuki Bakugo. 𝗵𝗃 said, looking at the creature. I see, then what has been done in order to keep him away from those kinds of thoughts? Nizu asked. I have literally tried anything to get him to talk to me, but he just doesn't anymore, stating that he doesn't want to burden me with something that isn't worth talking about. When I heard that his mental health was going on the decline, I couldn't understand why he didn't tell me. I was his wife, and we have a kid on the way, and I don't want my kid to grow up only to find out that their father is either dead or in the hospital dying from his mental issues. 𝗵𝗃 said, breaking down in front of her boss. I can see where you're coming from. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲, do you want to know something that happened in the past with the males of the world from a time long forgotten to us? Nizu asked curiously. Sure thing, if it will help me understand why he didn't tell me I will understand. 𝗵𝗃 said, sitting down. Well, the thing about the human psyche is that most people in the past have stated that only women can show their true feelings while the men of the world cannot. It will be seen as a sign of weakness towards others. Even though that kind of thought process isn't good, it has made the reason why most male children nowadays never tell their parents about why they feel bad and either go the route of being in but to their family, or just ignore their presence in the first place. I have noticed Izuku's decline in mental health since he was rejected from the heroics course 3 times. I knew that it would only be a matter of time before he eventually snapped and his true feelings would be on show for the whole world to see. But for him to think suicidal thoughts, someone had to have placed those thoughts inside his mind in order to make sure that his mind deteriorates to the point that Izuku is in the hospital. Nizu said, staring into 𝗵𝗃's eyes. He watched as her face went from shock to anger, and back to shock as she seemingly remembered something that happened in the past. Nizu, what is your policy about bullying in your school? 𝗵𝗃 asked, hypothetically. Well, we do not take it lightly. We make strides to know that our students are not bullied in the slightest and make decisions based on the parties involved to either expel them or place them in a different course. Nizu said. What about if the bullying happened before coming here? 𝗵𝗃 asked. Well, there unfortunately wouldn't be anything we could do. While we could keep a better eye on the students involved, it would take too much resources to make sure that we keep them under wraps as well as control. Nizu said as 𝗵𝗃 sighed. Well, that explains that. 𝗵𝗃 said as Nizu gained a curious expression. What explains what? Nizu asked. Well, you never found out about Bakugo still bullying Izuku in your school because of the fact that it took place while school was not in service for the day. You see, 𝗵𝗃𝗲 would always come after Izuku after school and beat him to high hell. You should have seen the look on his face while he did it. It was as if he was a demon in disguise as he smiled the entire time he beat my friend at the time to death. He even tried to hit on me while he was on the ground bleeding out. To think he had the gall to beat my friend up right in front of me, and then ask me out in front of him. It enrages me to this day that he thought he could get away with it. Mei said, looking away angrily. I see. Well, I will make sure that no more students are hurt in this way in the future, alright. Nizu said, smiling. I will see to it that it happens, principal. If it doesn't, you know who will come knocking. Mei said, leaving the office. When she had fully left the office, Nizu looked around with a sigh of relief. He looked at his wall of trophies that he had earned during the war against the villains as he was saddened by the deaths of those involved. His most prized student was in the hospital now because All Might had prevented him from entering the course himself, and Izuku's mentality had deteriorated to this point because of it. All in the name of keeping him safe. I wonder if you truly felt that in the moment you ruined the dreams of a young boy seeking out his way to change the world. All Might. Nizu said, as we SW to Mei. Equals 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 equals. Mei entered her classroom as she noticed how the students were more wary of her now than ever. Is there something wrong, kids? Mei asked, curious. They all pointed to the person behind herself as she turned only to come face to face with 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲 himself as he looked around the students. Hello 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲, I hope I am not bothering you at the moment. 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲 asked. I was about to start class, what is it? Mei asked, curious. Well, I wanted to know if you'd like to get some dinner with me later on today. He asked, a little nervously. Well, I could go out to eat, I just wish Izuku could come with me. Mei said, looking at him. So is that a yes? 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲 asked. Yup, and it will be as only friends. I am hurting at the moment, so I will need some support from my friends. You could also lend your support to Izuku as well. Mei said, as 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲 nodded. I will see you later on tonight. He said, leaving the place. Mrs. 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲, aren't you married to Izuku Midoriya? One of her students asks. I am, but that doesn't matter right now. He is probably trying to get me to calm down for the day. A lot has happened this week for me, Mei said. Outside the room, 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲 looked around as he smirked underneath his costume. With Izuku in the hospital, his plans of taking Mei from him were coming to fruition. It's only a matter of time before you're mine, Mei 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲. 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲 said, laughing. Equals 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 equals. A few days ago, Izuku was on patrol when he encountered a certain villain that was attacking civilians. So, you will be defeated in the name of the law, Izuku called out. As the villain turned around, he noticed the attire of the young man as he laughed. It's just the guy I was looking for. Mastermind, how would you like to become one of my suicide victims? The villain called out. I will not fall for your feeble tricks. I am Mastermind, the bringer of justice. The symbol of harmony. Izuku screamed out, attacking the villain. Mei was getting herself through her day. She hadn't expected the high-class person of 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲 to enter the school and ask her out, knowing that Izuku was her husband. But overall, she could just talk about Izuku the whole time because she still had to raise their child, who was really showing their quirk abilities already with their crosshairs for eyes as well as a mix of dreadlocks and curls for hair. Not to mention the fact that they have a dual quirk. Crosshairs as well as telekinesis. 𝗵𝗃𝗄 was the greatest thing to ever grace her life as she was adorable as well as had her father's tendency to mumble, but it was in her sleep. Although it was mostly incoherent since she was a baby, Mei still found solace that her daughter was showing signs that Izuku was making an impact on her based on his genes alone. She got herself ready for the date as she had been slowly but surely making sure that she had her recorder on her in case 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲 tried anything with her and would attempt to blame her if anything happened. She left her home and child in the care of Mitsuki as she went on her way to meet Ingenium at the restaurant as she thought about Izuku. He was still in the hospital as he was recovering from his moment of clarity as he tried to kill himself during his night of vigilantism. She knew that he acted that way mainly because of a quirk, but she never thought that he would go that far. So when she arrived at the restaurant, she found the young man standing at the table as she sat down and said, "Seat," and they began to talk to one another. "So how is Midoriya? I heard about what happened the other day." Ida said sorrowfully. "He's still in the hospital, and I can't believe that he nearly killed himself because of a quirk that affected his mind." Mei said sadly. "It is rough, but that is what it is like out there on the streets. Many villains look to take someone out and use their quirks to make it that much easier, and without one, he is a much easier target for villains." Ida said, eating his spaghetti. "Well, you'd be wrong about that," Mei said as she drank some wine. "What do you mean?" Ida asked, curious. "Izuku's been training for the last 10 years, and he has entered some fighting tournaments against those with quirks and defeated them with pure skill alone. He is a formidable opponent to fight, especially with his skills as an analyst. If I remember correctly, he gives out analysis to 𝗳𝗧𝗏 every other week so he could help the man out in a mission." Mei said, "I see, so he makes his money through analysis. Does he do anything else?" Ida asked. "He earned his way into my class with his creations. His babies were the most adorable. He made this one plushie that popped out of a grenade before. And he said that it was for kids." Mei said as she smiled happily. "He must be some man." Ida said, looking at her body a little. "He is, and please keep the eyes on mine own, please. I get enough of that with some of the male heroes out there enough, I don't need it with you." Mei said, causing Ida to look away. Equals 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 equals. The night continued on as the duo were sitting at their tables as they were about to leave. Mei had gotten up from her seat prepared to pay for her half of the dinner when Ida paid for it all. "Why are you paying for it?" Mei asked. "I only wish to be the gentleman and pay for our food. I will make sure that you get home safe as well," Ida said, pulling her by the arm. As they were walking, Mei noticed that her home was long since passed as she made it known to him that they are past it. Ida, we already passed the place I live at." "I know, you will be going home with me," Ida said, causing the girl to look at him in shock. "I'm not going home with you," Mei said, pulling her arm from him. "You're going home with me or your husband gets pulled from his cord," Ida said, threatening her. "You wouldn't kill my husband. You are really here to kidnap me, huh?" Mei asked, accusingly. "I was only here to take you out on a date and ask you to marry me instead of that quirkless person. He probably has information on you, doesn't he?" Ida asked, staring at her. "He doesn't have anything on me except my quirk. But other than that, he loves me with all his heart," Mei said angrily. "Well, he is unfit to be your husband at the moment," Ida said as he pulled Mei harder. "Let go of me," Mei called out. "Hey jackass, let her go," a familiar voice called out. Mei asked, turning around to find someone looking at them. He had black hair that had green highlights, and his eyes were emerald. There was also an assortment of freckles on his cheeks that were shaped as a diamond. In mere hospital gown and shoes, we find Izuku standing in front of Mei and Ida as he glares at the young hero in question. "I'm taking your wife as my own. She clearly has been brainwashed by you," Ida said, as Izuku walked up to him and punched him in the face. "That was saying that I had a way to brainwash someone who fell in love with me naturally and not artificially. But this," Izuku said, punching the man who was on the ground in the city while he was on the ground, "is for stating that I even didn't like my wife when I love her dearly. She is quite literally the last thing I have left other than our daughter. I don't need to put a restraining order on you to keep you away from my family, do I?" Izuku asked, curiously and filled with rage. "You don't deserve to have that brilliant woman with you," Ida said, before Izuku kicked him in the jaw, knocking him out. "Jackass," Izuku said, looking towards his wife. "Izuku," Mei stutters. "It's all right, Mei, just let it out," Izuku said as Mei hugged him tightly. "How are you even here? Aren't you supposed to be in the hospital?" Mei called out, confused. "Well," Izuku said, looking away. Days before last chapter's events, Izuku was running from rooftop to rooftop. He wanted to vent out some frustrations from the argument he had with Mei, as she wanted an intern to teach, and he wanted to just be alone. He really was horrible if he was going to yell at Mei like that. He doesn't even know why she even stayed with him all his life. She may like him, but right now he personally thinks it's because of him being the way he was, and her just wanting to make sure that he can be mentally okay. But the main issue of this problem right now, 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗀. He was the bane of his existence for his entire life up until his death. He really didn't want Katsuki to die. That would be hypocritical of his life's ideal of saving everyone with a smile. But ever since he was told that he couldn't become a hero as well as refused to become one through the sports festival, he was angry ever since then. He even adopted Stain's ideology of killing heroes who only are in it for the money as well as fame. A little pervert coming to his mind as he thought about this, but he glossed over it. Izuku had been beating down villains especially strong tonight. He had already defeated an escaped convict muscular by using his own muscles against him, as the man effortlessly just jumbled himself up in his own muscle fibers and tied himself up for the police. It was a real tragedy that the water hose duo were defeated by this bird brain of a villain, and he was an SS rank villain. He could take his anger out on the villains for tonight as he apologized to Mei in the morning. He really didn't need to have this attitude when apologizing to Mei because she wouldn't accept it. Jumping over another rooftop, he found himself at the target of his missions for the last week and a half. The 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗏 base of operations, the main base that distributed the drags known as Trigger in order to boost one's quirk's effects to great effect. As he was entering the building housing the drags he was planning on burning, he found himself surrounded by villains from the remaining Yakuza. He was chuckling at how they thought they could defeat him easily since it was revealed that he didn't have a quirk. But he used this to his own advantage, as he used each and every quirk that was used against him and turned them against their owners. As they were crying out in pain and suffering from their own quirk's effects, they were swiftly defeated as Izuku wrapped them up in multiple capture scarves and tied them to the top beam of the building. Taking the drags outside the warehouse, Izuku dumped them in the ocean as he placed gasoline inside the boxes and dropped a flare inside, causing a huge explosion of water as well as gas and carbon into the air. Walking away as everything burned in the ocean, Izuku was about to climb to a rooftop when he heard someone call out his name. To think that 𝗃𝗏𝗵𝗃 would grace the Yakuza with his mere presence. Or is it Mastermind now? The villain asked, as Izuku cringed at his old vigilante name. It's Mastermind now. What do I owe the favor of speaking to a high-ranking Yakuza member? Izuku asked using his voice changer. It's just been a long time since someone had managed to defeat us. Last time it was Night Eye and his student Lemillion, but this time it's someone who shouldn't even be alive in the time of quirks. So, why are you here? The villain asked, revealing his slender but buff frame. The man had long brown hair that extended to his lower back, and his eyes were the shape of diamonds, the color of which was a complete dark blue. As Izuku stared at the villain, he made a name that he thought was just a myth for the world as it was now. Shigaraki, I thought that you were killed. Izuku said, looking a little angered by this. Don't worry about that. I was killed by you after all. I didn't want people to know that it was me doing this. So I changed up the eyes. It was a real good decision. Shigaraki called out, laughing. You were killed by me. When did you take over the Yakuza? Izuku roared as he attacked the older young man. I wasn't killed by you, I was killed by dynamite. Although my death can't be held back for long. After all, I am immortal. Shigaraki laughed as Izuku punched him in the face. As the two began to fight, the area around them began to decay as Shigaraki was using his quirk to try and kill Izuku. I would never have thought that you'd be capable of surviving this amount of pain that I gave you that day. This time I will make sure that you are placed in Tartarus. Izuku roared as he slammed his bow staff into Shigaraki's stomach, folding the supervillain in two as Izuku kicked the man's face, sending him into the warehouse. The duo continued their fight as Izuku was getting closer and closer to defeating Shigaraki once again, But this time Shigaraki had something to use against the young vigilante. I personally think that you hit harder than dynamite. But overall, your tenacity is worse than his. Shigaraki roared as he kicked Izuku back. Izuku hesitated before looking at the villain again. He watched as the wounds inflicted on him were healed back to normal, but there was something odd about his voice that caught him off guard. It was similar to Katsuki's voice. Izuku struggled to get onto another rooftop. He seriously really needed to get out of there. Shigaraki was about to blow up because he placed a bomb in order to kill him inside his own body made to kill Izuku. But overall, Izuku was really injured as the supervillain had tossed him around like a ragdoll earlier when they were talking. Izuku looked at his lower abdomen as he saw that it was bruising badly. He really needed a doctor as he needed medical attention stat. But as he jumped across the building towards his home, he found that he was being chased by Eraserhead as well as Mindfreak. Today was just not his day, as he jumped from roof to roof, before being forced to fight against both heroes. But something was nagging the back of his mind right now. All of a sudden harsh thought that he had when he was a teenager had come out as he was fighting both heroes. Dodge to the left, counter then kick the other worthless. Punch to the left, parry and then headbutt the back of his vision quirkless reject. Jump to another rooftop and kick Eraserhead in the back as he turned to meet him. The worthless freak. Spoiled brat. You'll never become a hero, do. You can't become a hero without a quirk. Sorry, but you should give up. I'm sorry, Izuku, I'm so sorry. Izuku then backed into the edge of the building as he held his head, and as he backed away, he slipped off the edge of the building as he griped the edge as strong as he could. Sitting over a large gap of air, Izuku tried to keep the thoughts away, but he just couldn't keep them at bay. So as he was helped back up from the edge, Izuku was thrown to the side as he thumped on the ground. But before the man in front of him could do anything, Izuku spoke up. Shut up, 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 shut up. Shut the F up. Izuku screamed. Why do I have to be this way? Did I deserve to be ridiculed every single day of my life, all because of something that made me essentially worthless to the entire population? All I ever wanted was to become a hero and be like All Might. I never wanted to be quirkless, but it happened. I just can't stand the voices in my head anymore. They're telling me many things I need to do, but I thought I got rid of them back in high school. Izuku mumbled out after his yelling session. It wouldn't be until a few minutes later that he felt a hand chop the back of his neck as Izuku passed out into unconsciousness. Equals 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 days before last chapter's events. Izuku was slowly waking up from his sleep as he looked around the place. He was in a hospital and he didn't know what to do. Should he hide his identity or just run off before they could arrest him? He couldn't get to think about this more when the door to his hospital room opened up, revealing Eraserhead and Mindfreak entering the room. Behind them was Mei as she ran up to him and gave him a hug. She really loved him. As she sat next to him, Izuku cried his heart out as he let the bottled-up emotions that were inside him out as Mei pulled his face into her 𝗧𝗍 as she rubbed his head and back. He hugged her like she was his lifeline. As that was happening, Mindfreak and Eraserhead were watching the moment as Izuku cried for what seemed like minutes and hours, but it all ended about 13 minutes later. Alright, now that your emotions are in check, we need to ask you some questions. Eraserhead said, sternly as Izuku nodded his head. We know that you are the mastermind, and we want to know that you would be seeing charges of assault if you weren't fighting in self-defense. All because of a loophole in the law. Quirkless individuals can become vigilantes should they only be attacked first and then defend themselves. You fall into this each and every time we have tried to catch you. So you are off the hook. Just make sure that whatever comes out of your mouth doesn't get you placed in a mental institution. Eraserhead said, leaving the room. Taking off his mask, Mindfreak looked at Izuku and found that the young man was a father as well as a man seeking acknowledgement for his actions of trying to be a hero. I can understand your reasoning to become a vigilante. I was close to becoming what I hated about myself in order to be recognized myself. I just hope that you can forgive me for what happened while we were in school. The man said, revealing himself to Izuku as Hitoshi Shinso. No worries, I was a little angered by the loss in the sports festival in the first year. So you have nothing to worry about. I never really wished anything bad for you when you made it into the course and not me. You aren't who my anger was aimed at. Izuku said, as Shinso looked at him and gave him the answer he needed. Well, I now know why you were never placed in the hero course during our time in Yui. Shinso said, looking serious. Mei and Izuku asked, angrily. It was All Might. He wanted to make sure that you were never given the opportunity to become a hero, as it would turn everything that he built upside down, and he said it was all to defend you. Shinso said, as Izuku slammed his fist down on the table. That manipulative bastard. Izuku growled. I know, I said the same thing. But he's dead now, and there is nothing we can do about it. Shinso said, angrily. I know that as well. I looked up to him as a hero, not a person. I knew that he wasn't a good person, but to go this far. Despicable. Izuku muttered. Soon enough it was time for Shinso to leave as Mei looked at Izuku with a careful eye. She didn't want Izuku to think that she was looking at him like he was made of glass. His mother already did that before she died. Are you mentally? Mei asked. No, I need a couple days to get all this out. Don't let me keep you here when you got students to teach. I'm also sorry about our fight a few days ago. I didn't mean anything I said. Izuku apologized. I know, well I need to head out to you. I hope that you can take the invitation to Yui and become a teacher there as well. You could become a teacher for analysis. Mei said, closing the door behind herself as Izuku stemmed on his thoughts. Equals 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 back to present. So yeah, that was what happened. Izuku said, looking at Mei. Well, how did you get here? She asked, a little angry. I jumped out the window and ran towards your location. I put a tracker in your phone so that I would always know where you are. So when I found Iida trying to take you away, Izuku left the rest for her to analyze. You immediately came to my rescue. My big hero is a man with mental issues, as well as a kind nature that was skewed from all of society. You are my big stupid naive little hero. Mei said, as she hugged Izuku. She then noticed that he was still in his hospital gown as she then brought them home. Sitting in her crib was Inko as Izuku picked the girl up and hugged her as she hugged back happily, loving her father's presence. Mei, I think I want to become a teacher at Yui with you. I don't know how well I will do, but can you tell Nizu that I will try to become one of the staff members? Izuku asked, as she nodded her head happily. Also, you can have that intern you always wanted. Izuku said, smiling at her as she smiled back and jumped onto the phone as she chose the specific student she wished to have. They had similar looks to the very same girl that Izuku had met in a park one day, long blue hair with a green fringe in front of her bangs, as well as two tails that were fox-like in nature with the same colored fox ears on top of her head. I know just who to bring here, Mei called out as she smiled happily. Placing the file down, we see her full name on the file: 𝗧𝗵𝗲, Hero Course Student as well as Support Course Student. If you asked Izuku that what he thought he would become in the future, he would have told you that when he was a kid, he would have become the #1 hero of the world. But now, he would laugh in your face and say that he just wanted to make sure that the next generation of kids were having his kind of mindset in order to become a hero. He was now a teacher of the infamous UA, and he couldn't be any happier that his philosophy about heroes will be taken into account for the specific class he will be in charge of. He was going to be the teacher for a new class that focused on the specific quirks as well as attack patterns of villains that heroes go up against. It was a mandatory class that needed to be taken by all grades so that they could learn from an actual analyst himself about how to attack someone with a specific type of quirk, counter them, as well as find a way to make them stronger. It was the only reason Nizu had hired him as one of the UA teachers, He was the greatest analyst in the world and second only to him because of his ability to read someone's quirk without one himself and analyze it to a point that he could even tell you who your mother's quirk was based on little information. So imagine everyone's surprise when the main gripe of the hero world entered you as if he owned the place with a teacher's uniform on in the form of his vigilante costume. He didn't care if the other teachers found him as a threat, and he just wanted to see what others would do if they found out about his vigilante career. So once entering the class, he sat at his desk and started to grab out the lesson plan as he was thinking about what he should start with in order to gain the class's trust immediately. Equals 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 equals. It was 7:30 in the morning and the students were entering the newest class, Analysis Class 1Z. They all sat down in their seats as they noticed someone sleeping at the teacher's desk and were surprised that it was the vigilante mastermind. One of the students immediately went over to the sleeping vigilante and poked his face plate as they wondered if he was dead. This student was named 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗧𝗑𝗁𝗧. She had ash blonde hair that was mixed with brown and had one red eye with one brown eye with a permanent blush on her cheeks. As she poked his cheek to wake him up, she noticed him stir as he stood up to his full height of 6 feet 4 inches, and he towered over the girl as she shivered in his presence as it demanded respect. "To what do I owe the pleasure of meeting you, students?" he asked as he stretched his body. "Are you sure you're in the right place, Mr. Vigilante?" the girl asked the vigilante. I could be in the wrong place, but I know that this class is mine to teach you all. Welcome to Heroic Analysis. I am your teacher, the Vigilante Mastermind. And just to let you all know, I am most certainly not a hero," Izuku said, staring at his students. "Then what are you?" another female student asked, curious. "I am in between the area of hero and villain. I am a vigilante who takes the law into his own hands," Izuku said, pausing for dramatic effect. "Illegally," Izuku said, as chaos erupted from the classroom. Almost immediately the girl in front of him got into a fighting stance as she had small explosions coming from her palms, as Izuku stared at her in shock. "What is your name, little one?" Izuku asked, a little angry. "𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗧𝗛𝗏. And you better remember it, as I will become the next #1 hero," she called out, releasing an explosion in his face as he sighed. "I never thought that he would inseminate a woman, but what do I know? I did the same thing," Izuku muttered as it went over the other classmates of the girl in front of him, except the girl who looked angrily at him. "Are you talking SHT about my dad?" she called out. "No, but I am making a comment about how he told me I would never find love. Not only that, he tried to take my wife away from me many times before he married 𝗬𝗏𝗍𝗍," Izuku said, as the girl lost all fight in her at the name of her mother, who also worked here. "How do you know about her?" "Just I know about her because I went to this school with her. She was a really nice friend of mine. Before your father told her things about me that were explicitly not true," Izuku said as he guided her to her seat. Standing at the front of the class, Izuku pulled out a notebook that the young Bakugo remembered her father ranting about a boy her age when he was younger always wrote in that annoyed the hell out of him. "This notebook belongs to me, but this also has ways to improve and upgrade your quirk based on the analysis I made on them years ago. It is how I was more capable of surviving in the heroic climate that is today. I use these things in order to take down an opponent who is many times stronger than me and should defeat me by default," Izuku said as one girl rose her hand in the air. "Yes?" Izuku asked, waiting for a name. "My name is 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗧𝗛𝗏. And I wanted to ask about why you said it helped you survive in today's world of heroes," the young lady asked, curious. "Well, that's because of the fact that I am quirkless," Izuku said, as he watched as the students all looked at him in shock. As Izuku sat down in his chair, he looked at the students looking at him in either shock as well as surprise or complete and utter disbelief. "That's not possible in this world's collection of heroes as well as quirks," one of the smarter students called out, as Izuku chuckled. "Did you know that before I became a vigilante, I was aiming high for the heroics course when I was your age?" Izuku asked curiously. The entire class was now in an uproar as they were saying that 𝗏𝗏 were supposedly still extinct since there wasn't any left in the world, as Izuku merely sighed as he revealed his face to the class. He couldn't care about his identity being found out as he was already ousted to the police, and they couldn't put him away for anything since he had no quirk as well as he fought in self-defense. Wait, you're the 𝗵𝘃𝗲𝗏 that put a restraining order on my dad before he was killed? Bakugo called out, angrily. I know about how your father works, Yuri. And to make you understand something, your father killed my mother after the fact that I placed a restraining order on him. I'm not going to take anyone talking SHT about me to my face as I used to as a kid your age. If you want to talk SHT, make sure that you can handle having it spat back at you. Your father may have been the number 3 hero in Japan, but he was far from being a great hero in anyone's eyes because of the damage he caused from his explosions. Izuku said as he stared at the class. And don't take out what Bakugo's father did to my mother on her. The sins of the father should never be placed on the son/daughter. But you should be more careful if your life was basically being worshipped by others. Izuku said as he stared at her. The young Bakugo didn't say a word after that as she never really liked what her father did. She just wanted to meet who Midoriya Deku was. And to see that her teacher was Midoriya Deku as her father called him. She was glad that he wasn't as meek as her father made him out to be. But she was really sad that she would never get to rekindle the relationship her father once had with Izuku. She wanted to get to know her teacher, and she will do so in order to repair their family's broken peace. So she waited until class was over and Izuku called her over since he had some words to speak to her about. Sitting down in front of his desk, she was trying really strong to not be breaking out in tears about her situation with her mother. So I guess you would like an explanation about why you thought that I was the worst possible person you could ever meet? Izuku asked as he sat down next to her. Yeah, my dad always had bad things to say about you. But my mother always told me that you were a dork that she got along with during high school, and if there was a chance she could get with you during that time, she would take the chance now without any and all animosity that was given towards you. Bakugo said, looking out the window. Well, let's just say that your dad and I weren't always at each other's throats. We used to actually be really close friends, to the point that we thought of each other as brothers. Izuku said as some tears were showing up in his eyes. This was the first time he ever cried about anything regarding the past, and he was freely letting the Midoriya tears come out. He was the closest thing I had to a singular friend back when we were kids. I never really was that social as a kid, and it only got worse when I was announced quirkless. Izuku said, breathing heavily. What happened after that? Bakugo asked. Well, he turned on me. Izuku said, looking out the window wistfully. Why? Bakugo asked. I was quirkless, and he thought that I was a mere stepping stone in his path to become the number 1 spot in the world. I don't know where it devolved into him bullying me until I got into high school, but it continued even while I was there. He found me after every single day of school and found a reason to fight and beat me without any reason. He wasn't a good person by far, but with your mother reining him in, he seemed to have softened up recently. But overall, he was still his overly abrasive as well as anger-filled self. Izuku said as he looked at the little girl with a soft smile as he patted her hair. The girl, when feeling him pat her head with his hand, she only remembered how her father's auntie would do the same for her. Don't worry about a thing. Katsuki-kun is probably having a bad day. A feminine voice called out softly. A younger Yuri looked at the woman with a look of sadness as the older woman had green hair with the same eye color. She then looked at another picture inside the home of the woman and asked her another question. Who's he, auntie? I have never seen him before. Yuri asked the woman. That's Izuku. He's my only son, and I am proud of what he has become. He fought to become a hero, and even after being banned from doing so, he still became a hero in his very own way. The woman said as Yuri looked at her. What does he do that is similar to heroes? Yuri asked. He helps the heroes by making their support items as well as making their hero suits. He even made your mother's suit since she loved the design as well as how baggy it was for her. Not only that, but your mother told your father that she actually was dating my son. The woman said as she looked at Yuri. What do you mean by Izuku was dating mommy? Yuri asked. Well, before your daddy came along, Ochako Uraraka, your mother, was dating my son Izuku Midoriya. It made me so proud to see that he was dating a girl his age, and it seemed like she really liked him as well. But I guess she did what most other people her age did to my son. She broke my son's heart. The woman said. What did mommy do that broke Izuku's heart? Yuri asked. She left my son for your father. She had an affair with Katsuki while she was still dating Izuku. And ever since then she had been having an affair with him since Izuku never satisfied her needs. But before you look too far into that, just ignore that for Auntie. The woman asked, softly. What happened next? Yuri asked. Well, Izuku found out about her and he wasn't happy about it. He immediately left her because she had an affair with your father. But it wasn't until your mother told me what happened that I feel sorrier for her than I did for my son. She was forced to marry your father, dear. He was so angry at the fact that your father could have been Izuku that he stole your mother away from him and defiled her. The woman said, as Yuri looked at her in shock. What did Izuku do? Yuri asked, incredulous. He left, he changed classes and entered the support course in order to live with the fact that he could focus his anger and sadness into making projects to decrease the mortality rate of heroes. He became the hero of heroes. The woman said, as Yuri's memory showed the woman in her full glory. It was Inko Midoriya, the mother to Izuku Midoriya. I never thought that Kaken would inseminate someone, much less myself doing the same. Izuku's voice came in for Yuri's mind. I am so sorry about what my dad did to you, Mr. Midoriya. I never wanted him to do those things to you. Yuri cried out, tears streaming down. Don't worry, little one, I am here. Izuku said, as he continued patting the girl's head as she hugged him close, crying. I never knew that he'd bring you to my mom before she was killed by him. But know this, should you need some help, the 𝗳𝗵𝗃 family's doors are always open. Izuku said as he helped the girl calm down. As Yuri calmed down, Izuku looked at her and asked her one thing that he knew she could do. Yuri, I am going to ask you one thing. And I need you to let me know what you can do. Izuku said, as Yuri nodded her head. What happened to Ochako? Izuku asked as Yuri looked at him in shock. What do you mean by that? Yuri asked. How is your mother dealing with Katsuki's death? Izuku asked, concerned. She's sad that he's dead. She really loved him in his final years. I don't know what he did to make her fall for him, but she's not doing so well. She retired in order to work here as a UA teacher. Yuri said, as Izuku nodded his head. Do you want to know something else? Izuku asked. Sure. Yuri said, as Izuku pulled out a device. This was made back when I thought Katsuki was a close friend of mine. I was in high school during the time, and I didn't want you to suffer the same way he did in learning how to increase his capabilities with his quirk. So I finished upgrading this device to help you vent out your quirk so you don't hurt others. It also regulates how powerful your explosions are. Izuku said, placing the device on the girl's arm. As it transformed into a gauntlet, she looked at it in fear it might go off, when Izuku placed a finger by his mouth. It slowly moved up her arm as it covered it completely, and it then, to her surprise, cooled her body down whenever she felt the need to release an explosion. Not only that, but it helped her spread her quirk around her body in order to feel the warmth it always given her. How can I even repay you for this? Yuri asked. Just be a better person than your father was. He was always angry about being third place for the hero charts. Being a hero isn't about popularity. It's about saving others at the cost of yourself. Don't go out there trying to die saving others. That doesn't end well. Izuku said as he got up, walking away. Is there a way where I can have this for my hero costume? Yuri asked. Don't worry about that. It was already designed when I first say you on the lesson plan. Have a great 3 years, Yuri-chan. Izuku said, walking away. Izuku had been working at UE for a month now as he met some of the other staff of the school. He has met 𝗵𝗃 as well as Eraserhead, Present Mike, Vlad King, and a few others, but the one he didn't like the most was All Might's newest recruit from his agency after his death, 𝗵𝗃𝗏, otherwise known as lemillion. Now don't get him wrong, he likes the guy as a person, but as a hero he is trying to emulate All Might too much, and to make matters worse he said that he will retire once he saves at least 1 million people of Japan or the world. So once that is done, Izuku doesn't think that the world would remember him, as he would be a temporary hero that came about and just disappeared. But Izuku had been thinking about the guy's quirk, How did it evolve to allow him to phase through pretty much any kind of thing possible? He could even punch while phasing. Now that was what Izuku was trying to get to the bottom of, and he came to the conclusion that he somehow gained another quirk that allowed for that to happen. So Izuku thought that it was just his body evolving to be capable of seeing and breathing whilst being intangible. But there was a different dilemma for the young man at the moment. He was scheduled for his class to meet 𝗬𝗏𝗍 for the USJ, and he couldn't help but get some flashbacks to when the school was attacked by villains when All Might was still around. So making sure that he was completely prepared for anything, he had collected his vigilante suit and made his way to the buses as he waited for his class. When they arrived at the bus, he looked at them all as he saw potential in all of them, maybe except for the one who was perving out on the girls, but there was a girl perving out on the men, so he guessed it was the world balancing everything out. So as they got onto the bus, Izuku decided to take a small nap, but made his nap so that he was aware of everything that was happening around him. He overheard what the students were talking about and was surprised that they were talking about him and his abilities as a quirkless vigilante. He was proud that they thought that he was really cool as well as powerful as a quirkless individual, but he was a little sad about when one of them stated that they should be protecting him instead of the other way around. Equals 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 equals. Eventually they made it to the USJ as Izuku got off the bus leading his students to the entrance. When they stood in front of the building, the door opened to 𝗬𝗏𝗍 being her open and cheerful self. Hello students of UE. I hope that you all have been having a great start to your first year. She called out as they cheered for her. Izuku watched the girl with awe. She was so cheerful since the death of her husband Dynamite, and Izuku looked at her with admiration. Hey, where is 𝗵𝗃? He was supposed to be here today. 𝗬𝗏𝗍 asked. Shaking his head, he stated that 𝗵𝗃 was busy with another class and simply forgot about them. Nodding, she faced the students as she told them the rules about the place as she really wanted them to be safe here. It was then that Izuku's thought processing was boosted into overdrive as the lights were starting to go out as he looked down at the fountain. Are you kidding me again? Izuku asked, literally too tired to deal with this. Well, this happened last time, so it should be easy this time. 𝗬𝗏𝗍 said, looking at a tired Izuku. Kids, get back to the buses. You need to evacuate. Me and 𝗬𝗏𝗍 will make sure that you aren't followed. Izuku yelled, running into the fray. Equals 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 equals. As Izuku was fighting the enemies, 𝗬𝗏𝗍 looked at the students as she told them to get out of there. She was fighting a similar creature to Kurojirai as he was teleporting all over the place while also dodging her strikes. The children had managed to get outside of the place and onto the buses while 𝗬𝗏𝗍 was fighting the villains. One of them started the bus as they turned it around and started to drive back to the main school building, this time around going way differently to the last time. 𝗬𝗏𝗍 managed to defeat the last of the villains as she tossed the body out of the building, activating the school's defense system, alerting all heroes in the area of the attack happening. Back with Izuku, he was taking out villain after villain in an endless horde as they were using their quirks to their advantage, not knowing his. So this is the infamous mastermind. Never thought I'd meet him here. A stuck voice called out. Izuku kicked another villain away as he turned to look at the person behind the voice. And he was surprised that it was 𝗵𝗃𝗲 𝗏𝗏 of the League of Villains. He was genuinely surprised that she had gotten out of the mental institute since she sides and helped the heroes. But now that she was on the villains team again, he had to be extremely careful with how he fights her. He kept his eye on her the entire time as he fought against the villains as their numbers started to dwindle, and that was when she chose her time to enter the battle. She jumped at him with her knives as he dodged them to the best of his ability as she cackled as she swung her blades. It was here that 𝗬𝗏𝗍 made it on the scene as she started to Take down the other villains and make sure that they didn't get to the fight between the two hardcore battlers. She was taking down villain after villain as she used her quirk to take away their gravity as well as punch them away from her. She even utilized a gravity field around her to lower it so she could get out of sticky situations that she got herself into. When every single villain was defeated, she heard the scream of Mastermind as he was sent flying towards the stairs of the USA. Looking back, she saw many cuts and bruises on him as he slowly got back up, and looking across the field, they found Toga with barely any damage at all. She had bruises on her body that were healing up as if she had a healing quirk, and that was seriously off Izuku. You have a regenerative quirk as well. Seriously? Izuku yelled as he attacked her again. You know, for a hero you sure are attacking with everything you got? Are you sure that you're a hero? Himiko asked, curious. Who said that I was a hero? Izuku asked as he said the word with venom. As Himiko looked at him incredulously, she started to cackle even more as he punched her in the face, sending her back into a wall within the place. You seriously aren't a hero. Why are you even working at a place where you can get caught, vigilante? Himiko asked, curious. My wife told me to work here, and I am quite fond of having the next generation heroes that have my philosophy. Save everyone that you can that is within your reach. It doesn't matter where they are. So long as they can reach your hand, you can save them. Because heroes always sacrifice their lives in order to defeat villains. Izuku yelled as he launched a multi-combo towards the shapeshifter woman as she tried to dodge every attack but came up short every time. Soon enough, Izuku had enough wounds on his body that he was leaking BLD pretty much from every cut on his body. That is plus ultra. Izuku as he cuffed Himiko and placed her with the others. And just as he sat down, the rest of the Yui staff arrived as 𝗬𝗏 sat down next to him. You know, you make a really good motivational speaker. 𝗬𝗏 said as she leaned on his shoulder. Why a sure thing, I guess we make a good team. Izuku said as he was slowly passing out from BLD loss. Mastermind. 𝗬𝗏 yelled as he slumped over on the staircase. Don't worry about him, he'll be fine. Just need to get him to Recovery Girl. Nizu said, as he had 𝗵𝗵𝗃 pick up the unconscious Izuku and lead him away from the area. 𝗬𝗏 was looking at the unconscious form of Izuku when another teacher came over as she looked at 𝗬𝗏 with a mirth in her eyes. Hello there, Ochako. The woman said, as Ochako looked closely at the girl. Where have you been? I haven't seen you since high school. Ochako said, hugging the girl. I know. But I was busy being railed by the guy who was taken to Recovery Girl. Mei said as Ochako looked at her confused. Railed by Mastermind. She asked, and that is when it hit her. That new teacher that she was told about was Izuku Midoriya, the guy that her husband hated with a passion while she had a crush on him in high school. She never got the chance to meet him personally. Equals 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 equals. A few days after the incident, Yui had told the press that their teachers had been capable enough to defeat the villains that entered the school. And after that, Izuku woke up with both Mei and Ochako sitting next to his bed as he groggily stated while under anesthesia, I swear if I had a child with you, I would pay child support, but please don't make my life a living hell. And like the demon broke down, Ochako and Mei had started laughing whilst also crying about him. Do you have any idea what you did to me? Ochako cried out, hugging him. And no, what the hell did I do, Mei? Did I get her PR gin and tea before? Izuku asked, concerned. If you did, I would be forcing you both into a shotgun wedding in order to make sure that the child is safe and sound under our care. Mei said as Ochako started to blush madly. What are you talking about? Ochako asked, now embarrassed. Well, you had a crush on him during our time in high school and now you have your chance to have him be your baby daddy. Mei said, bluntly causing Izuku and Ochako to blush madly as well as do a spit take. What the hell, Mei? I thought you didn't want a polyamorous relationship. Izuku yelled as he slowly tried to sit upright, with Ochako helping him. Yeah, our relationship is boring now with just the two of us and Inko, so you will be giving this girl a baby? Or do I need to do a shotgun wedding in order for the wedding to happen? She said sternly. And Izuku was now sweating profusely, as 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 stared on in disbelief. Was she really being forced to marry her crush from high school? No, that couldn't be right. It has to be his. As long as Ugravity is fine with it, I don't mind. Izuku said, blowing everything out of proportions. Why you be fine with me? 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 asked sadly. Sure, not sure if you knew this, but I may have had a bit of a crush on you as well in high school as well. I just never got the chance to take you out on a date since Katsuki managed to steal you away. Izuku said, muttering the Katsuki part. Great. I am glad we came to an agreement. Also, you have to be prepared for her child moving into our home, Izuku. Mei said, leaving the nurse's office. I'm not sure how to take that. Izuku said, looking at 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏. I know, but are you sure that you're fine with someone like me? 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 asked. What do you mean? Izuku asked. Well, I'm a widow, I'm getting old in years, and not only that, but I think you look good for your age. 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 said, as Izuku patted her head softly. Don't worry about your body nor your age, you look as appealing as you did then, perhaps even more appealing now than before. Izuku said, smiling. Well, I guess I will meet you later. 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 asked, curious. Sure thing. I just got to get used to having two women in the house with me while I cook. Izuku said, looking out the window. Sure thing, meet you at your place tonight. 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 called out, leaving him in silence. So you can come out now. Izuku said, as some of his students opened the door. It was Kirishima's daughter, 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏's daughter, Todoroki's son, as well as Shoji's son. Teacher, are you alright? They asked. I'm fine, just some cuts and bruises. Nothing like Recovery Girl's healing could get me back to working shape. I will still be here tomorrow. Don't worry. Izuku said, rubbing the girls' and boy heads softly. They all hugged him as he laughed at their love and attention they were giving him. Make sure to do your homework later on today. I want you to write an essay on why you listen to the heroes around you, as well as make an analysis of the opponent before you fight them, alright? Also, Yuri stays back here for a minute. Izuku said, staring at the kids. They all nodded as they left except for Yuri. She sat next to him on his bed as he looked at her with a sad smile. Your mother and I are getting together apparently. Izuku said, smirking at her. You are? She called out. Yup, was forced into it by my wife. So you will be my stepdaughter. Not only that, but I will be teaching you what not to do from what your father taught you. Izuku said as she nodded her head at him. Ditto, now go home with your mom, she will be packing your things when you get back. Izuku said, getting up from the bed. As she left, Izuku looked at the door, as Aizawa looked at him through the window. Giving the other a nod, they walked in different directions as Izuku gives the man some good parting words. You were a great teacher to your class. It was a shame that one of them had villainous habits. Izuku said as Eraserhead looked at him. What do you mean? He asked, or more like demanded. Katsuki Bakugo, he was the one who made my life a living hell, told me to kill myself just before meeting All Might, and then made my life here a living hell as well outside the school. Just letting you know, if he wasn't tamed by you, he would have been a villain posing as a hero. Izuku said, leaving the man with something to think about. Izuku and Mei were sitting at a table in the teacher's lounge of the school. They had just told 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 that she could move in with them, as well as force the young woman to get into a marriage contract with Izuku because she had feelings for Izuku back in high school. I know that you wanted her opinion on the matter, Aizu, but you really need to have your crush self-satisfied. Mei said angrily. I know that, Mei, but you really had to force her into it? Izuku asked, concerned. I know that you love me unconditionally, Aizu, but you really need to allow yourself to get accepted into your younger self, as he was crushing on 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 during high school. Mei argued. Mei, I know that you love me and I love you with all my heart, but forcing that girl to marry me through a contract is too low for me. Even if you do it without my consent, I know that if she wanted to leave, she will. I still don't believe that you didn't hate me during high school because of the bullying that I suffered during high school because of Katsuki. Izuku said as Mei looked at him with a sad look. Aizu, I know that you hate this. I do as well. Don't you think that this is extremely strong for me to do, knowing that you lost the love you had for 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 during high school? Mei asked as Izuku looked away. I know that Mei, I know. I can't just have Ochako forced into this kind of relationship without her consent, and it hurts my heart that she is just accepting this without looking at the form. Izuku said as he looked at Mei. God. Why the hell are you so against this? Mei screamed as Izuku screamed back. Because I don't want to lose you. Izuku screamed, angrily and filled with sadness. You what? Mei asked, confused. I lost my first love already. I don't want to lose you too. Izuku said as he started to cry. Mei then sat next to Izuku as he was now crying harder than he ever had in his life. She was happy to hear that Izuku didn't want to lose her with the relationship with Ochako, and he was expressing it by yelling at her. Hey, don't worry about little old me. You need to put a bun in her oven and stake a claim on her. Polyamory is still legal in this day and age. Mei said as Izuku stared at her. I know, but I just can't help but feel like I am taking away something from Katsuki, even though he deserves it for all he's done to me. I don't like taking something that used to be his. Izuku said sadly. He still was bitter about Katsuki's death, and with him never being capable of relinquishing their friendship, Mei knew this as well. She knows how Katsuki was towards Izuku and knew that some part of him always wished for the Pomeranian to just apologize for the SHT he had done, but now he can't get that chance. It was here that Ochako decided to enter the room as she sits down next to Izuku. Hey, don't worry about losing her. If she left you, then that means that she wasn't for you. Ochako said, right in front of Mei, as said girl nodded her head. If I left you, Izuku, then that would mean that I lost someone who was the world to me. Someone who was kind, generous, as well as a smart cookie in terms of support. You are also the very first friend I ever had in my life. So me leaving you for someone else would be me spitting on the promise I made to your mother. Mei said as Izuku stared at both of them. I'm sorry for throwing a hissy fit about this. I just never had more than 2 people believing that I could have a family in my life. Not to this point of a family, of course. Izuku said, as he sniffled. Well, in terms of this marriage contract, I will take it. Katsuki was very abusive towards me anyway, and I was waiting for something bad to happen to him eventually. Ochako said, signing the paper. Wait, you need to read the fine print first. Izuku said, as Ochako finished signing it. No. Izuku said as his face lost all color. What is wrong, Izuku? Ochako asked, concerned. Izuku pointed at a certain line in the paper and Ochako read it, and she wasn't happy about what it said. Basically telling her that within the minute that this paper was signed she would need to have 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗍𝗔 with him to the point that she gets impregnated. Why is that in there? Ochako yelled, looking at Izuku. I tried to warn you. It was Mei's idea. Izuku said, mumbling the last part. What did you do? Ochako asked. No, demanded. I may or may not have changed the paper to where you had to have EC within an hour of having the paper signed. Mei said as she whistled. Well, since I already signed the paper, let's head to your place. I need to get some stress out anyway. Ochako said, as she pulled Izuku away from the school. Have fun, Izu. Mei called out. No soba for you tonight, Mei. Izuku screamed as he was hauled away from the school whilst the students were looking on in awe. Izuku woke up in his bed next to Ochako and Mei. Both women were sleeping soundly as Izuku rubbed Ochako awake as she groggily woke up looking at him. When she saw his face, she smiled goofily as she hugged him. Morning, she called out. Morning, Ochako-chan. Want to go out on a date today? Izuku asked, looking into her chocolate brown eyes. Sure, just let me get some food as well as a shower done, she said, leaving the room as Izuku went to the kitchen. When she arrived in the kitchen, she found him cooking some mochi as well as eggs and bacon for breakfast. How did you know that mochi was my favorite food? She cried out as she started to eat the mochi. I didn't know about mochi being your favorite, but I guess it was just luck on my part, Izuku said, smiling. They started to eat breakfast together when Mei came down from their room and started to eat some breakfast with them as well. So, what is up, Izu? I am going to be heading to class to teach them today. From what I know, you have the day off and you should use that time to get to know Ochako. Mei said as Izuku stared at her. Mei, I was going to take Ochako on a date today, since today is my day off. and I wanted to get to know 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 without your presence. See you when you get off work. Izuku said, walking out the door with 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲. Izuku and 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 were walking around 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Mall as they were out on their date. Izuku had bought some clothes as well as souvenirs for 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲. They were out talking about heroes and how to increase their defenses against villains when the place they were eating at was attacked by a villain. A specific one to be precise. It was an 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗲. He had escaped from the police and broken his quirk suppression cuffs as he went out on a rampage against the police as well as local heroes. But almost as soon as he started to fight with the police, he was attacked by two underground heroes who fought in the early hours of the morning and the late hours of the evening. It was the underground duo 𝗬𝗍𝗫 as they were a duo who fought villains as well as defeated them whilst healing the other with their abilities. 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 was the main enforcer of the two since he had the attacking power with his quirk while Eri had the healing effects in order to heal any damage to them as well as civilians. Well, that was settled really fast. Izuku said as he looked at the young heroes. Yup, children grow up so fast these days. 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 said, smiling. I know, I gave 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 the idea of going underground a few years ago. Izuku said, smiling as well. How so? She asked as he told her about his encounter with the boy a few years prior. They were walking over to a park when they ran into the next generation of quirk users as Izuku smiled sadly at them. What's wrong, Izuku? 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 asked, concerned. I am just glad that the children of this day and age don't have to worry about not having a quirk in this day and age. With the previous generation like us, I was the only child who was born quirkless. I was bullied relentlessly for it and was told to kill myself many times over for it. I proved them wrong that someone quirkless could become a hero if they only applied themselves in order to do it through the sports festival. Izuku said, looking at 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲. You won the sports festival? She asked as he looked sheepish. I won the 3rd year's sports festival. I literally brought a wrench as a weapon into the arena and literally smashed Katsuki's face in with it. Izuku said, chuckling about it. You did that? 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 asked, incredulous. Yup, and I don't regret it at all. He treated me as SHT on the bottom of his shoe, and he was one of the people who told me to kill myself in my middle school years. Izuku said, as 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲's hurt eyes then began to see reason about his smashing Katsuki's face in. As much as I don't like how you smashed my late husband's face in during the festival with a wrench, I can't believe that he allowed you to get away with it. 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 said, laughing. Don't worry, he got me back for it after the festival. He claimed that I was cheating with the wrench to my face after the festival was long over when he came over to my house. He beat me half to death there before he even left. Izuku said, sighing. I'm sorry that happened. Had I known, I wouldn't have stayed with him. 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 said as Izuku waved her off. Don't worry about that, it was in the past. He never really wanted me dead even though he told me to. If he did want me dead, he would have killed me during our childhood when he lost all respect for me. Izuku said, as they walked further around the park as they sat down at the beach and looked at the horizon. The view is great, isn't it? Izuku asked. It is. I can't believe that Katsuki never brought me to a place like this, 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 said, smiling. The sun was now setting as the duo were walking around at night as they were on their way back to the house where Izuku and Mei lived at. They were around the corner when Izuku was knocked down to the ground from behind as a villain stood over him. Get back, lady. He's quirkless. I need to kill him. The villain called out. What are you talking about? 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 yelled back as she got ready to fight. The villain said nothing as he pulled out a gun and placed it at the center of Izuku's 𝗧𝗍 and moved it a bit to the right, aiming for a long and painful death for Izuku as he pulled the trigger. As soon as the sound of the gun went off, Izuku felt the pain of the bullet entering his body and exiting on the other side of his 𝗧𝗍 as it was crushed by its own force into the ground beneath him. As soon as 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 was about to fight the villain, said villain was about to run off from what he was about to do when Izuku got back up from the ground as he looked at his wound. Just a flesh wound. Nothing that the healing spray at home won't fix. Izuku said, as he pulled out a small gun of his own as he pulled the trigger back at the villain, knocking him out instantly. Seriously, can't even leave my home for a few hours on a date and get attacked at the end of the day. Man, I really need to talk to a therapist about my abhorred luck. Izuku mumbled as he slowly cuffed the young man as he placed the young man against the curb as 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 called the police. Once they arrived at the scene, Izuku gave his card as they looked a little angered at his vigilantism against the villain, as Izuku clearly told them that he did it in self-defense since he was attacked. They let him go with a small warning to not do it again as he nods. When they arrive at the home, Izuku and 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 head off to the bedroom as they were too tired about the day. As Izuku laid down in the bed, 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃 moved over to both sides of his body in order to gain as much warmth as possible from him as they all fell asleep. Izuku wouldn't get sleep that night since their bodies made him extremely needy in sexual needs. Izuku and 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 woke up on the bed as they heard some movement coming from the covers over Izuku's lower body as they pulled it up to reveal Izuku's member as he began to breathe. Are really it? This early in the morning? Izuku asked as he stared into the woman's eyes. What? I wanted to get your morning wood down. I didn't think that it would wake you up. 𝗵𝗃 said, smiling as she went back to his pages. 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 was completely blushing at how large his member was for being quirkless, and she soon joined 𝗵𝗃 in pleasuring Izuku for the morning. As it continued, Izuku's breathing hitched when 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 decided to let 𝗵𝗃 continue on Izuku's as she moved to his sack underneath as she pleasured him there. 𝗵𝗃 had been pleasuring him faster since she noticed his breath hitching as she watched as his eyes had slowly begun to become clouded as his breath could be seen in the cold morning air. Soon enough, his instincts had overtaken his logic-filled mind as he pushed 𝗵𝗃 and 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 onto the bed as he leaned over both women as he pulled their clothes off. 𝗵𝗃 and 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 yelled out in surprise as he pulled them both to his body as he started to pleasure both of them before they could get him his release. He then pulled them up and over his face as he stuck his face in their snatches as he and fingered both women relentlessly. Both women were screaming in joy as he pleasured them both, and as soon as they neared their eventual release, he stopped, causing both women to look at him in anger. Why did you stop? They yelled, as Izuku merely answered by slamming his pee-pee inside 𝗵𝗃 as she gasped in surprise as she held on to him. He began to move inside 𝗵𝗃 as she stared at him with hearts in her eyes, and 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 watched from afar as she was left behind and masturbated to them both. Soon enough, 𝗵𝗃 reached her limit as Izuku released his 𝗧𝗵𝗃 inside her as she gasped from the amount that entered her body. 𝗵𝗃 said as her body twitched. Izuku then moved his attention over to 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 as she stared at him in slight fear as his pee-pee was back to full mast as he crawled over to her with lust in his eyes as she slowly moved back before he was swaying over her. She watched as he lowered his face as he her passionately and then softly inserted his pee-pee inside her as he started to F her senseless without that he had done to 𝗵𝗃. 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 was surprised that Izuku could be soft whilst being in his lustful state as he slowly began to increase his own speed inside her as she felt his pee-pee slowly increasing in size as it reached her womb. As soon as his tip hit her womb, she was immediately hit with a euphoria of having something trying to penetrate into her womb as he went faster and faster as his pee-pee was now at double the size as he released inside her womb. 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 as she wrapped her legs around Izuku's back. Izuku then watched as 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 was slowly trying to move away from his 𝗧𝗃 as he felt his pee-pee slowly moving out of her pages. But the moment that 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 thought that Izuku was going to pull out, he slammed into her pee-pee as she released a of pleasure as he continued attacking her inside her body. 𝗵𝗃 had regained her consciousness as she looked over at the two as Izuku was going for a round two on 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃's body as she was being in a very familiar press as she smiled. He was placing the young woman in a mating press since he was her pee-pee while her butt was pointing upwards upside down. As Izuku slammed his pee-pee inside her womb over and over again, 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃 was screaming in joy as she felt his sperm slosh inside her body. As soon as Izuku felt himself about to release inside 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗃's womb, he leaned down over her 𝗧𝗃 as he started kneading on her very large melons as they moved up and down on her body. 𝗳𝗧𝗏𝗄's screams of pleasure were like music to his ears as he deep down inside her. As soon as he reached his 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗄, Izuku for some reason in his mind leaned over her collarbone as he bit down on it as he pumped liters worth of 𝗬𝗏𝗲 inside her womb as her belly had inflated about a couple inches. As he turned his attention over to Mei, she was already having her butt in the air as she got into her doggy-style position for him to attack her from behind. As soon as he moved over, she slammed her butt over his PP as he fell back, causing her to be sitting over him as she took the domination portion of their SXL contact. As Mei was slamming herself over Izuku's body, she felt that he was being very close to being back to normal as she wanted to have what happened to 𝗳𝗧𝗏𝗄 to happen to her. How he was able to inflate her stomach by a few inches she didn't know, but she will not be left behind in that notion. As she felt his member growing larger by the second, she knew that he was about to release, especially since he had just recovered from releasing inside 𝗳𝗧𝗏𝗄. So when the time came, he eventually sat up as he placed his face into her as he on her melons as he increased his speed as he slammed Mei's body down onto his PP as his member entered her womb and released liters of in as well into Mei's pages. As Mei looked down, she watched as her belly increased in size by a few inches, just slightly smaller than 𝗳𝗧𝗏𝗄's stomach inflation. With that she fell back as Izuku breathed heavily as he laid on his back at the end of the bed as Mei looked around the place with hearts for eyes. Meanwhile within 𝗳𝗧𝗏𝗄's body we use some X-ray vision. We can see Izuku's 𝗧𝗵𝗲 cells rushing towards the girl's egg cell as it was attacked by every single 𝗧𝗵𝗲 from all directions. It was until one single 𝗧𝗵𝗲 cell had found an opening in a certain spot as it slammed itself into the egg cell's wall and pierced through it as it entered the nucleus and merged with it. On the outside 𝗳𝗧𝗏𝗄 felt it happen somehow as she twitched almost as soon as it happened as she smiled goofily.